Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo Sam Monson live on YouTube talking 2025, last year's first round draft picks. We're going to go pick by pick. Look back about the pick, what we thought about the pick, and what these players did after year one and what we're expecting in year two.
A little revisit?
Yeah, a little revisit. It's all brought to you by FanDuel and coming at you from, I believe, the Antonio Cromartie studio in part with Huggies. So, I enjoy this show, Sam, because we do this, draft night. We review every single pick.
Right.
And then we review them again. But we don't always go back and revisit. We started doing this last year saying, what if we went pick by pick and said, here's what we thought, here's what we saw, here's what we're expecting going forward.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So let's do it. We're going to go 2025, last year's first round draft picks. It all started with the Tennessee Titans taking Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami, with the number one overall pick. Thoughts on Cam Ward, his rookie season, and we can go back in time. Hey, what did we think at the time? Was this surprising? Was this expected? Thoughts on Cam Ward and his rookie season?
Yeah, well, it was very much the expected pick for the Titans. Way back at the beginning of the whole draft process, it's like, yeah, maybe there's some debate at the top, and very quickly it was like, no, Cam Ward is a little like this year with Mendoza. Cam Ward is the number one overall pick. That's where the Titans are going to be going, and it just sort of settled in as that was the expectation. Then it became, okay, what is the situation? What are we expecting from him in his rookie season? How's he going to play? Part of Cam Ward's kind of prospect profile as a draft prospect was this guy is a big game hunter more than most quarterbacks, right? He is out there looking for the deep strike, looking for the big explosive play, sometimes at the cost of just picking up the easy stuff, taking a profit, right? He's trying to make the explosive dagger shot anytime he can. And what was interesting, I think, is that wasn't there for a lot of his rookie season. And then I think late in the year, despite the fact that the situation around him wasn't good, I think we started to see that come back. That's where I think you started to get excited for what Cam Ward can be going forward. Early on, he sort of got upstaged a little bit by some of the other rookie quarterbacks once they got on the field. But then I think late in the season, you really started to see what he could bring to the table.
And I've reiterated all throughout this offseason and reviewing Cam Ward's rookie season how difficult it was.
Yeah.
How difficult it was facing the Texans defense twice.
Incredible
career starting
schedule
against the Broncos. He faced the Seahawks, faced the Rams, every top pass defense in the league seemingly. And when it was adjusted, it was like this is the toughest slate of any
Chargers,
quarterback.
Jags,
yes,
brutal schedule.
Jags twice. I mean, it was a brutal schedule, and doing it with Calvin Ridley as his one for a chunk of the season. Calvin Ridley out, two rookies as primary targets in Chimera DK and Eric Iamanair. The offensive line I thought was okay. It was fine, but overall, not a great supporting cast, a difficult schedule. And I thought he did better as the year went on with some of the turnovers. They had some ugly fumbles early in the season. I thought a lot of that got better. The other thing that really changed, and when we're talking about what are we looking for going forward, Cam Ward started running the ball in the second half a bit more. And we always talk about the fine line with quarterbacks between, ironically, what Jaxson Dart, his new offensive coordinator, Brian Daboll's old quarterback, did. Do you want to run? Cam Ward should not be running QB power and counter 10 times a game. We know that. But scrambling a little bit more to just avoid negative plays, a couple keepers here and there, and I think that's going to open things up for Cam Ward and the Titans. So we'll see how much new OC Brian Daboll wants to tap into that.
Yeah, it felt like an exploited part of his game, both in terms of scrambles and design runs. Again, you're not really loading him up as like a huge part of the design run game, but he's athletic enough that you could tap into it in a couple plays a game just to keep the defense honest, just to make them think about something and then open stuff up for other people. And it really wasn't a particularly big part of his game for a lot of it. And it never really showed up as a huge part. They did start to tap into it a bit more late in the season, but I always felt like I would like to see them, use a little bit of both just more than they had. And maybe that will be what we see going forward, because I think it should be part of his game. Like if you're going to lean. It's part of most quarterbacks' games now, right? Like there aren't that many guys anymore that are pure pocket passers who are never going to run the ball, barring emergency, right? And so if you've got a young, athletic, pretty big quarterback, you should use that.
The other thing I'll be keeping an eye on going forward, Carnell Tate in as a weapon, Chimera Dike with his speed, 4.3 type of speed. Want to see Cam Ward take some more of those downfield shots. I want to see how much. I mean, if Calvin Ridley's out there and healthy, Ridley and Tate as a 1-2 punch for Cam Ward, I think that's a good.
Yeah.
That's a nice group. I've said this a lot. Like, I don't love Ridley as a pure one, but when he's got a partner on the other side, a complement, Ridley can, play pretty well when he doesn't have to be relied upon every single game. We both loved Carnell Tate. I think he'll make an immediate impact. I think Ridley could be a really nice complement. DK and Iamanair as more vertical type threats. And then use your legs a little bit, I think, like Jaden Daniels does, where if nothing's there, go pick up 5.
Yeah.
And just avoid some of those negative plays, stay on schedule, avoid taking a sack and trying to force it and do too much. I think some of those parts of Cam Ward's game could work well this year.
It's a little bit like Drake May a year ago, right? Like year one was about survival. Just get to the end of the season. Don't break. Don't develop some ugly habits. And then year two, we'll see what we can put around you. And, the Titans, you bring in Carnell Tate. That has the potential to be a massive difference to the team. You bring in Wan'Dale Robinson as well in free agency. That will make a difference in a different way. And so the receiving core actually looks in pretty good shape around Cam Ward. The offensive line was further ahead, I think, already than the receiving core. It hasn't necessarily had the same level of attention, but it probably didn't need to. So it's definitely taken a step in the right direction. Again, like Drake May, maybe it's not great yet, but it's definitely a big step over where it was when he was a rookie.
All right, so that was the first overall pick, and as you said, it was pretty locked in somewhat early in the process. There were rumors that, hey, Travis Hunter's a generational player, or Abdul Carter looks like the next great edge rusher, but the Titans needed a quarterback, and they went that route. And they, by the way, if we look back historically, they turned down an offer from the New York Giants to trade up. The Giants wanted to trade up from 3 to 1 to take Cam Ward. Now Daboll, who I think was a part of wanting to make that move, gets to coach him.
Second year in a row that the Giants were trying to go get their guy.
Yeah, and ironically, they land on Jaxson Dart, traded up to get him in the late first, and probably feel pretty good about that at this point, even though they've got the head coaching turnover. But at pick number 2, the draft got fun. The biggest story of the draft until Shedeur Sanders went in the 5th round. Browns involved in both. The Cleveland Browns trade out of the number 2 spot. The Jacksonville Jaguars trade up, give up a future 1 and other picks to go get Travis Hunter.
Yeah. Huge statement of intent for the Browns. And this was first-year GM James Gladstone, right? Like his first big swing at the bat of what he was going to do there. And because Travis Hunter was this unique prospect, right, this two-way player, not just a corner who had some packages on offense, dabbled a little bit. We've seen that in the past, whether it was Chris Gamble or Champ Bailey, or there's some players where that's been the case. This was a guy who was genuinely a two-way player, right? Who was a Heisman Trophy winner because of that, because he's playing two completely separate positions on different side of the ball basically all the time, all the snaps, right? The number of snaps he was racking up in each game was utterly unbelievable. So it made everybody incredibly excited by what if you could do that at the NFL level. Some people immediately dismiss that as an idea. You just can't do that. There's no way. Well, nobody thought you could do it at college either until he was there doing it. So the fact that Jacksonville then goes and makes this huge trade to go get him, well, now you're super excited, right? And they're immediately like, yeah, he's a two-way player for us. We're going to see exactly the same thing. It's going to be Colorado college Travis Hunter at the NFL level. Got everybody crazy excited. And then kind of the worst case scenario, or everybody's worst nightmare happens. It doesn't go amazingly well, which is, to be expected. Both of those are difficult positions to hit the ground running at the NFL level anyway. And then he eventually gets hurt. And you're like, well, can you do that at the NFL level?
Yeah. I mean, they really leaned into receiver over corner. And there's so many, we broke down Travis Hunter so much, and it's still interesting to break down and what the future looks like. We all assumed that corner first, receiver second was
the easier thing to do.
The easier path. Yeah. Now, you emphasized a lot, and we came out of the combine saying this, like, as just a pure receiver, he's excellent and maybe the best in the class and right up there with Tetairoa McMillan and beyond. The two things that were curious, that he leaned into receiver over corner, and to me that he played more like Z move receiver. He was more of a gimmick receiver in Liam Cohen's offense.
Right.
Underneath routes, some screens, when it felt like he should be more of just, hey, line him up outside, let him win with his athleticism and ball skills, let him run more of a vertical route tree where I think a lot of his stuff was horizontal. And as they started to do that, I think you got to see his potential a bit more. But the other part of all of the Travis Hunter discussion was not just what's this ideal world for him, but what's best for the team. And if the team is feeling good at corner, he could play more receiver. If they're weak at receiver, if they're good at receiver and they're weak at corner, he could play more corner. And I felt like the Jags may have said, hey, we want him as a receiver. And I think on last year's team. But this year, with Brian Thomas back, Jacoby Myers, and then the breakout season that Parker Washington just had, wouldn't it be better for Jacksonville to say, all right, go play full-time corner, use your ball skills. He's so good, seeing things, breaking, making big plays. The receiver ball skills show up so well at corner. Go do that full-time, and then do the 20, 30 play package at receiver. And I think that might be best for Hunter's just value in maximizing what he brings to the table.
Yeah, because everybody's opinions on Travis Hunter are so entrenched already, it's hard to have a nuanced, rational conversation about him and what he should be. But I think people forget, I tweeted coming out of the combine or at the combine that year that I've asked basically everybody I've come across who they had ranked as the best wide receiver in this draft. And the only person that did not have Travis Hunter as wide receiver 1 was Trevor Sikkema from NFL Stock Exchange, right? He had Tetairoa McMillan. But at that point, at the combine, everybody said Travis Hunter is the best wide receiver in this draft, right? And then we get to the NFL regular season, and the Jags have basically decided that the easiest way of just integrating him immediately is to use him as this horizontal gimmick, force feed the carries type of receiver. That's like, okay, you can't do that, but you don't do that to any other guy you think is the best wide receiver in the draft, right? Yeah. The number one wide receiver in any given draft is not going to step in to that sort of gimmick, manufactured touch type of role. They're going to be a much bigger part of the offense than that. So I think eventually the Jags decided that during the course of the season, that this is just radically underselling what Travis Hunter can do. And right at the time they felt like they were getting that lesson was when he gets hurt. And we only saw like a game or two effectively of him being used in this bigger, more expansive role. And then he gets hurt. And so the people that don't think he can do that discount that as a thing. The rest of us didn't get to see it for long enough.
And hindsight's really sharp when, I'm sure somebody's out there being like, man, you thought Hunter was better than Tetairoa McMillan? What a terrible take.
Right.
Because we saw what McMillan did as a rookie, and any of those takes weren't to diminish McMillan. We'll talk about him in a few minutes. Some of his stock did take a hit right before the draft. Mm-hmm. I think we always said, McMillan, top 2 receiver in this draft. It's just a lot of people were in on Hunter, and like you said, we just started to tap into that before he got hurt. That's another one of those questions, though. He's light. Now, I saw a picture going around, and who the heck knows what's real?
Everybody's added 15 pounds of muscle this offseason. Everybody. Except...
I have not.
Except Josh Simmons, who's lost all the weight in the world.
But gained muscle. And the muscle's coming in.
Well, he's either gained muscle or he simply looks more muscular because he's lost 25 pounds
By the
fat.
time this airs, he'll have the muscle on. Because that's in a few weeks' time. My point is, he's a little bit slight, and if you were worried, like if you were a Travis Hunter detractor coming out, you would say, first off, is he great at receiver? Is he great at corner? Can you split the difference? If you're saying, well, he could play either. It depends on the depth chart. You've got 2 players for the price of 1. A detractor would say, well, if he gets hurt, you lose 2 players. You lose 2 depth chart players. The Jags, their investment, giving up multiple picks, including this year's first, which became Casey Concepcion. do you want to give up multiple players for the one player who might be able to fill multiple roles, but what if he doesn't?
I mean, that's not even a detractor. I think that's an honest downside to this investment in a two-way player in that, the upside is potentially massive if he's able to do that. But if he gets injured, which is a risk for any player in the NFL, you are losing two players if he goes down. I mean, that's just a reality of this potential cheat code of being a two-way player. You are also doubling the negative if he does get hurt, which happened last year.
Right. So prospects going forward for Travis Hunter, what do you want to see and what are your expectations?
I just want to see him healthy. I think they were genuinely on the right track by the end of the season, you know?
Yep.
I think they made missteps on the offensive side of the ball by trying to just integrate him into this sort of gimmick role. I think by the time he went down, they had figured out a better solution than that. And then I think he'd already shown that he could be a decent corner for them. I just want to see him make it through a season and not get hurt. And if we get that, I think we will see some version of a two-way player playing at a pretty high level, which is exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what the plan is and how they're looking to deploy him. I'd like to see him play a little bit more corner. And then, like I said earlier, I think the receiving core is so deep that you don't have to force it. But I think that's what's going to be tricky about the evaluation for the Jags is the offense got better without Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just, Hunter left, we got better. They got Jakobi Meyers in there. The whole offense settled down. Trevor Lawrence played the best ball of his career. He was just, hey, Jakobi Meyers this week, Parker Washington next week. Brian Thomas Jr. wasn't being force-fed. That trio can be excellent with three different skill sets. Then you drop Hunter in there, and you can make the argument that top four is the best top four group of receivers in the NFL if they're all playing to their potential. But that's an if because we've seen Brian Thomas Jr. play better 2 years ago. We've only seen 1 year of Parker Washington. Myers has always been pretty dependable, but he was like extra dependable for the Jags last year. And then Hunter, he's a what if. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'd rather see more cornerback snaps, sprinkle them into the offense like we all intended or thought that they were intending to do. And then I think he's going to have a good year. If he stays healthy, he's going to have a good year.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to write off Travis Hunter.
No, I think anybody who is really, knee-jerk reacting to this rookie season. I think he showed promise at both positions. And that's not true for every rookie at either of those positions. So for it to be the case at both, I think is reasonably impressive. The biggest concern is I think a lot of people's worst-case scenario was, well, that's just an inevitable injury, right? You can't – that workload, playing both sides, being a two-way player is just an inevitable injury waiting to happen. And that did happen year one. So really, I think that needs to be everything for him this year is can you do whatever this workload is going to look like and stay upright for all, if not or the majority, if not all of the season.
All right, Travis Hunter off the board with pick 2. Pick 3, the New York Giants take Abdul Carter, the edge rusher out of Penn State. I think he had a nice rookie season. I don't know if the public's down on Carter because that defense was pretty bad. The run defense was pretty bad. But he was...
I think it's just the sack total, honestly.
He rushed
5 sacks or whatever.
That's stupid. We're
sure, but
we're beyond that as a society.
We're not, though. You think we are, and then every time it comes around, it's like, this guy only had whatever sacks. It's like, theoretically, we should be, but we're not, collectively.
Well, we're here to help the average fan look at more than that. I thought he got after the quarterback at a high level, and it got overshadowed by the Giants' defense just being pretty bad.
Yeah. I think he was a pretty impressive player. Obviously, there was also he got benched basically for disciplinary reasons twice, right?
I think that's more of a concern than anything
else.
It's
definitely a bigger concern for me than the fact that he only had 5 sacks or whatever it was. But it's really the only downside to me. Like that, those are two things that I think were a little bit. I mean, those are concerning. The fact that happened a couple of times in his rookie season. Having said that, I thought he handled the whole Jaxson Dart Trump thing reasonably well. Like I thought he came out of that with some credit. Now people criticized the tweet that he sent to begin with. It's more immaturity. But the way he then talked to the media, the way he then spoke about it, I thought he came across very well. So like that didn't strike me as a guy who was wildly immature and just another disaster waiting to happen. So it's a tiny sample size. It's obviously heavily filtered by team PR and crisis management and all that kind of crap. But if those two things were just immature mistakes as a rookie, and they're behind him now. I thought he looked like an impact pass rusher, athletic. Everything you saw as a prospect, I thought translated immediately to the NFL level, and then the sacks will come.
If you go back to Carter as a prospect, he was a linebacker as recently as 2023. Full-time linebacker who they moved around and he blitzed a little bit, moved him to edge in 2024 to the point where I thought early in 24, his last year at Penn State, I'm like, I don't know if he's ready. I don't know if he's ready to rush the passer. And then that just got better and better and better. So throughout the 2024 season, I thought he improved his moveset, his nuance, his ability to get after the quarterback to the point where it's like, yes, absolutely, this guy's a top 4 type of pick in the draft. He goes number 3. But my point is he's still developing as an edge rusher. I believe it was Next Gen has him with the most quick pressures of any edge rusher in the NFL.
13, I think.
PFF had him with 66 total pressures. So he played 844 total snaps. So he played a lot of football, had the benchings and some of the off-field maybe questions, and we don't see most of that unless he gets benched. So who knows? But 66 pressures, some really quick wins in there. And as you said, when you have those quick wins, like the difference between 5 and 6 and 10 sacks is the quarterback getting rid of the ball, the quarterback tripping, your corners covering somebody for more than 1.5 seconds. There's so much else that goes into the sack totals. What the pass rusher can control is winning your one-on-ones, and Abdul Carter did that at a high level relative to other rookies, certainly, but relative to the league. So I think he's got another big step in him this year. He's got to finish a little bit better, had 10 missed tackles. A lot of players have that, like they're in and around the ball, got to finish better in the run game. Or as a pass rusher, that'll help with the sack totals as well. But he looked really disruptive, and now you have Arvell Reese in there. Like, what are the prospects going forward? You have a former linebacker turned edge in Abdul Carter. You have a linebacker slash edge in Arvell Reese. As of record time, they still have Kayvon Thibodeau, but we'll see. And they have Brian Burns. There's a lot of flexibility. And they used Carter. They moved him around, played some spy, lined up in the A gap. They moved him around. The defense can tap into his versatility and Arvell Reese's versatility and create some serious havoc.
Yeah, and potentially Carter can help with whatever hybrid role or deployment we're going to see from Arvell Reese as well. Like, as a guy who did make the transition from off-the-ball linebacker to defensive line edge rusher, like, he can help that along, right? He's walked that.
All right, that's Abdul Carter, number 3. Pick number 4, Will Campbell, offensive tackle out of LSU to the New England Patriots. Bitter taste, finished with the finish in the playoffs, really struggled in the playoffs, struggled in the Super Bowl. I think he was playing pretty well leading up to that. There's some ugly losses on tape. And I'll be honest, like when you look at him and the other Armand Membou and Kelvin Banks, they've got some ugly losses on tape. Campbell maybe had a touch more than both of those guys even before the injury. But after the injury, combined with running into Adafe Owe and Will Anderson and Nick Bonito and the Seattle defensive front in the Super Bowl, Campbell struggled down the stretch. Yeah,
again, it's a nuanced conversation. He was okay as a rookie, reasonably solid. Gave up quite a lot of sacks. If you want to judge an offensive lineman by that, it's usually not a particularly good way of doing it.
I don't even want to mention it because it's out of their control.
Yes, but for him, it's an overall profile. Like, he gave up a lot of sacks, he gave up quite a lot of pressures, and he gave up a lot of penalties.
I will say the sacks that he gave up were
bad,
pretty well earned by him.
So that's the thing. It's like all of those combined are building a coherent picture, which is a guy who loses more than you would like your franchise left tackle to lose, the number 4 overall pick. Also, the playoff run was fairly catastrophic. It was also against, again, arguably the 3 best defenses in the NFL. 4, I guess, if you want to throw the Chargers in there. But we've said all along, when okay players run up against elite players, they lose, right? That's just expectations. So when you're in the playoffs and now you're facing Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter, you're going to lose more than you did when you were going up against, random players, that just generic normal players. These are 2 guys that are getting paid $40+ million a year. You're supposed to lose to them more than you lose to the other guys. The Seahawks have an incredible pass rush. Denver has an incredible pass rush. Like, these are expected struggle games for Will Campbell. They also coincided with he had a knee injury. Now, that cuts both ways in that, number one, he's got a knee injury, so sure, that's probably going to hamper you. But I think it was an LCL injury or an MC, whatever it was. Mitchell Schwartz, former all-pro offensive tackle. Not Pro Bowler.
0-time Pro Bowler.
But all-pro. He was saying, look, functionally, that's not a knee injury that should be hampering you, really.
Yeah.
But who knows, right? Different players maybe feel it differently. It's at least worth mentioning, as that did pretty well coincide with his downturn in play, as did, he faced a lot better player.
If you told me that was the performance that he was going to have against those players and he was fully healthy,
right,
I could see it.
That's the thing. So it would make sense anyway.
It's not 100% a fair excuse, right, but it did happen.
So, but yeah, both those things make sense in and of themselves. Like if you said that, hey, your starting offensive tackle's got a knee injury, is he going to play worse to the level that he played worse? That would make sense on its own. It would also make sense if you said he's 100% healthy, but look who he's about to face, that he had those. So you put them together, it all makes sense, right? Point being, he's definitely not as bad as he looked in the playoffs. But he might not be an elite level offensive tackle prospect, and maybe never was. I don't know that he was ever in the sort of the Joe Alt bucket of awesome prospect, even as a college player. He lost more than some of these other elite blue chip type of offensive tackle prospects. So he's going into the season now. They're going to play him at left tackle. I still think they believe in him, but he's going to have to show it this year. And if he struggles this year, then he may be getting either benched or moved into guard.
So my thing with Campbell, the other thing that we talked about for months and months and months was his arm length, the short arms and everything. And not everything was arm length driven, but it showed up. Like when he loses, it can be ugly. And we said back in the SEC, whether it's Landon Jackson, whether it was Kyle Kennard, like the best SEC rushers did get him.
Yeah.
The best NFL pass rushers did get him when he wasn't getting helped. He is like a pitcher with an 84-mile-an-hour fastball in the majors, not in high school.
Okay.
In the majors. He has to be perfect with his command. He has to be perfect with his punch timing, with his sets. He's got to be perfect. I just don't think he has.
I can't believe we didn't mention the arm length until now.
I know.
Stumpy arms.
Yeah.
That's his problem.
And so, again, there's nuance to this whole thing. Like, what's the difference between just, a half an inch of an arm? It really is your strike zone, your timing. I don't think his margin for error is there. I think he's capable of being a good, solid offensive tackle. I called him my breakout player this year. I think he could be a good, solid offensive tackle. You've brought up the point, though, is do you not have the upside?
Yeah.
So if Campbell, let's say I don't know how many pressures he gave up. Let's say he had 50 losses last year. You'd expect you're going to improve your technique. You're going to improve. Let's say you cut it down to what should be, 40 losses this year, 35 losses. If you could cut that down even further, if when you lose, you have the length to recover, right? You have the ability to recover even further. So I think there might be a cap to his potential from a pass protection standpoint. I think that's fair. I still think he could be a good, dependable left tackle. And then the part that doesn't get discussed is the run game. He showed some power in the run game. He's really athletic. You could see him get out in space. They had a lot of big runs behind him when he was pulling out in front or getting to the second level. So he's a good run blocker, and I think that'll continue to improve. But similar, he's just got plays where he just completely whiffs. He has to be pristine from a technique perspective because I think he is working with that. Just like the width, we talk about the wingspan, the width perspective. He doesn't have the ability. There's a lot of big offensive tackles whose like footwork is atrocious, but they can just get a hand on you and you're done. He doesn't have that ability.
Right.
He's got to be in position over and over and over again. So it's just on him to be that 84-mile-an-hour pitcher with pristine control, changes speeds, and keeps rushers off balance. I think he's capable. It's just harder than for some other tackles.
Yeah, the fact I think that the arm length thing or the wingspan thing, those two combined, however you want to view them, where they might manifest is in what happens when the rep is already going bad, right? Like I think it's not that he can't play because if his footwork is good, if his technique is good, otherwise he's in position where the arm length is. You're not going to lose because your arms are short, but it might be a case of when you're losing in the rep already, now your arms being short or your wingspan being small means you're never getting that back and you're in trouble. Like, it's a clean loss as opposed to a loss that you might be able to mitigate to some degree with your length and your size. That's where he doesn't have working for him. So maybe he's a player who his loss rate is not going to be atrocious, but every time he loses, it's going to be bad. And then the other thing,
that's what I'm seeing. Right? Yeah, they're some clean. They're not like the half man losses that he's either getting bullied or just hands are getting swiped pretty easily and quickly, and he's unable to recover.
But then the other thing I wonder is whether he just becomes a tackle who is good and not great, or above average but not good, right? And the thing is, people hate those guys. Like, Charles Leno was that guy for years. His own team, his own fans hated him. His own fans would say Charles Leno sucks, and he didn't. Charles Leno was a fine, perfectly decent, good sometimes, starting left tackle in the NFL. But those guys lose when they face Myles Garrett, right? Those guys lose when they face Will Anderson Jr., and that's what people remember. It's like, you got wrecked on the big, and those are often the biggest games because those are the teams that make the playoffs and blah, 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 right? So your inadequacies are exposed on the biggest stage, and people immediately assume you're worse than you are. I do wonder if we're headed for a world where Will Campbell is a solid or, above average or good, somewhere in that spectrum, and those guys will just get beat up against really, really good players.
The two comps that I always bring up for Campbell, I know we're spending a lot of time on him, but we did before the draft as well because it's interesting. Braden Smith, former Colt, current Houston Texan, and Luke Gedeke, right tackle. The other two right tackles, doesn't matter left versus right. But Braden Smith, who has guard arm length and has had a good, solid NFL career, you'd never put him in the top, 5 offensive tackles or top 10 offensive tackles, but he's had a good, solid career. And Gedeke is like a brawler, though. Like, he's got short arms, but he will fight you. He will get after it. He's tenacious, and I think Campbell just needs a little bit more of that to his game. And if he plays at a Gedeke level, I think he'll be fine. That's better than a Leno level. I think it's enough to be happy with him as your left tackle going forward. So I think it's possible. Gedeke's in the under 33-inch arms, and Braden Smith's under 33. Campbell's, depending on your measurement, 32.5 to 33. We'll see. I don't know. But I think that's the part. Like, if he could get some of that Gedeke tenacity and wrestler, like phone booth fighter type of mentality, I think Campbell can tidy up the pass pro a little bit. Mm-hmm. All right, pick 5. So the Browns traded down to 5. They take Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan. We thought at the time, aggressive move for the Jags to go get Travis Hunter. Fun. Called it a win-win because, hey, we'll see what Hunter ends up becoming, but definitely thought this was a win for the Browns.
Yeah.
To get the extra first-rounder, which ended up being Casey Concepcion, a second-rounder, which ended up being Quinshon Judkins. Some other picks moved around, but I think the Browns are feeling good about this. Mason Graham played a ton of snaps last year, so I think a lot of the percentage production numbers are just okay, but he got better as the season went on. Only 1 sack, but another guy that I think can get home as a pass rusher and was pretty good in the run game.
Yeah, I thought it was great business for the Browns, the trade down, because they were apparently, had they stayed there, they would have taken Travis Hunter. So it was changing their move, right? It was moving off Travis Hunter to move down for the package that the Jags were offering. I think that was the right move, in part because Mason Graham was a really good consolation prize, a guy that a lot of people thought was as good as anybody in this draft class. All positions created equal, like position agnostic, forgetting the value aspect of it, might be as good a player as anybody in the draft. And so being able to move down, get the extra trade haul from the Jags, and still get a Mason Graham felt like a great move from the Browns. Plus, you're able to line him up next to Myles Garrett. It's all good. I was reasonably underwhelmed by his rookie season. He was okay. He was solid, but he didn't make as much of an impact. He wasn't as big of a game wrecker than I expected him to be, particularly when, you are lining up next to Myles Garrett. Like, one guy is getting all the attention there and it's not you. I expected more from him as a rookie.
Yeah, I think what's tricky is he played 765 snaps, and I think sometimes that doesn't, like, a PFF grade is 68, and the run defense and pass rush grades are just okay. And I think it's harder for those to show up in such a high volume at defensive tackle. But all of those, I think all that got better as the year went on. he didn't show the same type of power that I thought he showed at Michigan. So I'd like to see that better from him. I think a lot of players his size struggle with, anchoring against double teams. I don't think that's ever really going to be his game necessarily, but I think he showed a reasonable amount of disruption. There just weren't enough, to your point, like one-on-one clean wins as a pass rusher. Just not enough of those. I think he has it in him. I think there's another step to take. I think you almost use it in his favor that he played so many snaps. I thought he was really good on stunts, blowing things up to free up other people. That goes unnoticed. And he was part of this really good defensive line really good defense and a really good defensive line that relied on rushing 4, right? So he's not getting the benefit of, more one-on-ones and blitz schemes and things in his favor. So I think there's ways to explain away what we would consider like mediocre raw production numbers, but I think there is definitely a next step to be taken. And I had high expectations for him as well. I would say he was underwhelming relative to my expectations, but not as bad as maybe people may have thought. I think he's going to be okay.
He's also got this weird thing where I don't know how big he is. Because we had this, he was listed by Michigan at 320, right? Then he shows up at the combine at 296 pounds. And you're like, that's a wild disparity, even in this current world of, the numbers are often inflated or over-exaggerated at the college level. So then you're like, well, okay, number one, how big are you and how much of this is slimming down for pre-draft processes, et cetera? He's listed in the NFL at 315, but I think he does look closer to that 300 level than he does 315, 320. And the way he plays the game, I think that's a significant difference in inertia and bulk and size and just physics, right? If you're actually in and around 300 pounds and you play the game as a sort of wrecking ball, physical, run into contact type of way and power player, as opposed to quickness and speed and penetration and avoiding contact, not being 315, 320 is potentially a fairly significant difference. And we're now in this world where we're never going to know unless someone asks, what's your actual playing weight? And I haven't seen that anywhere. But
get the Browns beat on it.
That's where's Mary Kay?
Mary Kay.
Go and ask Mason Graham how fat he is.
You get hung up on the weight stuff quite a bit.
All right. I think it's important. Again, the fact that elite offensive players, right? The fact that they deliberately keep themselves at what is quite clearly an unhealthy, body composition status to maintain a weight of a sufficient level. They're not doing it because, they're not doing it for no reason. They're doing that because they believe there is significant upside to carrying an extra 20 pounds of fat than they need to, right? Joe Thomas, I think, is the best example. That guy is maybe the best single offensive lineman of this century, right? Who was dealing with knee injuries, dealing with chronic, the man's bone on bone in both knees, I think, at this point in his life. Now, the dude looks like an Adonis. He's shredded, he's, 0% body fat, whatever. The dude looks phenomenal. But even late in his career, with a decade's worth of experience, having never missed snaps, dealing with wrecked knees, that guy never decided, you know what, I'm going to play this year at 285, I'm going to play lightweight, and I know that my technique and my ability makes up for it. He knew that if he was going to play at the NFL level, he needed to weigh 315. And at the point where he couldn't weigh 315 anymore, it was time to hang him up, right? So I think it's important when you start talking about guys that are way away from those numbers. It's not an insignificant thing. There's a reason guys like that play at that weight. And if you're going to be, like Aaron Donald, right? If you're going to be 285, you better be bringing something different to the table. And Aaron Donald did. Mason Graham's not Aaron Donald, I'm not saying that. But if you're going to be 300 instead of 350 and 320, you better be playing like a guy that weighs 300. And I don't know that he does.
I think he tries to. I think he wins
tries.
Better with,
that's different.
I think
though,
he plays
right?
better with quicks and agility than he does with, say, anchor and power.
I agree. That's my point.
I think he showed power more at Michigan than he did last year for the Browns.
So that's simply my point is if he does weigh in and around 300, you better end up being a high-level player in terms of quickness and agility and not power. And that's what he hasn't shown yet, at least at the NFL level.
All right, that was pick 5. Number 6 overall pick, the Raiders go running back Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah.
And so we were debating, how high do you take the running back? Do you take him if you're the Raiders? The offensive line going into this pick, it wasn't like we were ranking it as one of the worst in the NFL.
No, it didn't look terrible. It was debatable. It was a lot like the Cardinals this year, where it's like you could just about convince yourself this line is good enough to justify this pick.
Going in, Colton Miller is a very good left tackle. Dylan Parham, who's been a reasonable starter at guard, even though he's gone now. Jackson Powers-Johnson at either center or guard. And then DJ Glaze was coming off a season where he was a reasonable right tackle. And we didn't maybe debate it enough, but we easily could have said, hey, Armand Membou could be the pick here if you want to really lock in right tackle. But there are enough people, certainly in our chats and mentions, say, no, DJ Glaze is good enough. He's fine.
Yeah.
Turns out whether it was the personnel or the coaching, whether it was Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator, Pete Carroll's son, offensive line coach, whatever it was, the line was so bad that Ashton Jeanty had nowhere to go. But the few times that he did, I think he showed he's tough to tackle and he's got big playability. That's not to say none of it was his fault. There was definitely some points where maybe, we talk about like the Jahmyr Gibbs burst and everything where he can just outrun unblocked defenders or whatever it may be. I don't know if Jeanty showed enough of that necessarily, but I think he showed enough that if they improve the run blocking, his production's bump it up significantly.
I don't think he's that type of player. Like he's not he can be a home run hitter, but in the same way, like it's sort of like, remember Barry Sanders used to get criticized for his top end speed. It's like you can run him down. It's like, yeah, after 85 yards, like what good is that to you? You know what I mean? Like he can get caught from behind. Like you can catch Ashton Jeanty from behind. But
Frank Gore had that. I mean, he was really good up to 20 yards, and he wasn't going to break off.
So I think he's going to be a different type of player. But we saw like he's the cautionary tale now for this is why your offensive line needs to be in good shape if you're going to draft a running back high, or you need to accept that you're writing off his rookie year and you're only going to get the benefits of this guy after you fix the offensive line. Like that is an alternative argument to this whole thing that, yeah, look, the line wasn't there, but it will be next year. And that's good enough. Jeanty, that Raiders offensive line didn't look terrible on paper, but it ended up playing terribly. And in particular against the run game, it was abysmal. I mean, he was by far the most difficult, he was facing by far the most difficult picture in the NFL basically every time he touched the ball. Like the handoff, he's getting met in the backfield almost all the time. The few occasions where you did give him a crease and some space, he looked like Ashton Jeanty. So I think he's now the classic cautionary tale of how high can you draft a running back. It's like, well, question number one is, what does my offensive line look like? If it's going to play like crap, don't draft him. Now, it doesn't mean you're, maybe if you're looking at, okay, what is the outlook going forward? What can Ashton Jeanty be? Maybe now you're looking and saying, has your opinion of what he can be diminished even a little bit based off what we saw last year? Maybe, but I still think he can be a really good player if you give him some space.
Yeah, living in extremes here. Like, I don't think he's Trent Richardson. Trent Richardson was one of those guys that we still couldn't figure out why didn't this work because he had power, speed. But I think what we found out with him is that he forced a lot of missed tackles, but he could never just like regather himself and create after that. I will just say there might be a little bit of that to Jeanty, more than I would have expected. That if you slow him down a little bit, he might not be able to like regather and create. So I think he's going to be worse at creating in negative situations. But I think if you give him a little bit of space, I think there's actually a little bit of Saquon Barkley to his game, but in a different style. Barkley has a lot of negative runs, doesn't create well in negative situations, but when you give him daylight, he could take it to the house. I think Jeanty, not because of his speed, if you give him daylight, he's tough to tackle in the hole and with, just like a yard or two beyond the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. That's where they bounce off of him. So if he gets a little bit of daylight, I think he's a 4.5 yards per carry type of player. But if you don't give him any room, last year he averaged 3.7. And I think he might be a little bit more dependent on the line than I had expected going in. Is that a fair assessment? I'm trying to he's not full Trent Richardson, but I think there's a little bit of Barkley where there could be some variance to his numbers depending on how bad the situation is.
My takeaway was less that and more. I think that's true of almost every running back.
It
honestly.
might be. I might be projecting too much onto him.
I think we really do just undersell how important it is for an offensive line to be in front of a running back, or the impact that it can have.
But Barkley was. I know Derrick Henry had a year where he was under 4 yards per carry, and they had awful run blocking for a couple of years for him. But he had overcome it a few times. Like Nick Chubb, I always compared Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley.
But it's also the extremes. It's like, how bad are we talking here?
I understand.
Right? And that's the same thing. It's like that was the Justin Herbert argument with the offensive line. It's like all bad lines are not created equal. Like, how bad are we talking here? This Raiders offensive line was basically as bad as it gets. I don't know there's a single running back in the NFL that would look anything other than pretty average behind that offensive line.
And it wasn't just they didn't block well. Like, there were times they didn't block anyone. Like, it was a physical thing and an assignment thing. They were not blocking.
So my takeaway wasn't that I expected Ashton Jeanty to create more in the face of this terrible blocking. My takeaway, if I was like did anything change between now and him as a prospect? Mine was not that I expected him to create more, but I was maybe a little underwhelmed by his just sort of general freakish physical traits, right? I expected the occasional time he's tackled that I was kind of expecting him to break that tackle, or the occasional crease of space that he had. I expected just a little bit more burst out of him. So, again, the only... Like, he was generally pretty flawless as a prospect, but one of the sort of question marks or potential red flags, like, he was doing this at Boise State, and it is different, right? So that was maybe the one thing where I looked at his season and thought, I still think he can be very good, but I don't know that he can be Saquon Barkley, 2,000-yard rusher, regardless of the offensive line. That would be my only question.
I only used the Saquon comparison because I used to look at Saquon and Nick Chubb, and say, I trust Nick Chubb in a bad situation more than I trust Saquon. And I think maybe I'm just overrating the 1 year. I might not trust Jeanty in the bad situation as much as I trust the truly elite running backs in the NFL like a Chubb. But if you give him an average to good situation, I think he'll come good. Or maybe make more of that than other running backs will, because he is tough to tackle. He is really tough to tackle once he gets going. That's a good in-depth breakdown. Are we going to do this for everybody? I don't think we can. Pick number 7, New York Jets go Armand Membou, right tackle out of Missouri. So 3 tackles in the top 10. Will Campbell, Armand Membou, Kelvin Banks. I would say if you were ranking them, Membou probably has the argument that he was the best. It's him and Banks were both pretty even, solid across the board, and maybe a tick above Will Campbell, especially with Campbell's collapse there. But Membou had a nice rookie season for the Jets. Yeah,
he was impressive. I mean, you can make similar arguments for him that you can with Campbell in terms of he also coughed up quite a lot of penalties, sacks, and pressures. But I think overall he was pretty impressive. Again, worse situation in terms of, that Jets offense was miserable. But Membou was the guy who, as the process went on, as the pre-draft process went on, I think his stock was just going up and up and up. And more and more people were warming to him as a prospect. And by the end of it, he ends up going 7 overall. And I think absolutely fully justified that with his play.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job. He's pretty quick in pass pro. He moves well. He does have the recovery length and the requisite size. And I think you could see that. He uses his hands pretty well. And I think the difference between him and Banks got run over a couple times. Campbell got run over a couple times. I think Membou's a little bit sturdier against power in the bull rush. And you just see, I think he's just got really good all-around tools. Movement, power, length, independent hands, can finish. And I think PFF had him as, solid 70s, 72. Banks was a 73. Campbell ends up as a 67. All of those guys in that range, that's a good rookie season, being in that range for a position that generally incrementally improves. And I think it was, Jets fans should be excited about what they saw. Played over 1,000 snaps. He was charged with 8 sacks as well. So he was charged with 8 sacks with a better pass blocking grade than Will Campbell, who was charged with 9 sacks, including the playoffs. So the difference there, though, again, is like he has Justin Fields playing quarterback for him for a chunk of the season. And the difference between when you just don't look at sack totals. Just don't look at sack totals. It's dumb. For offensive linemen especially. Like, it's worse to look at them for offensive linemen than it is for defensive line. and we harp on it for defensive line more than anything. Sometimes in Campbell's case, when he lost the sacks mates, you deserved.
Yeah.
Your quarterback deserved to get sacked on this. But a lot of times you have a bad block, the quarterback evades it, or you have an okay block, you lose it late, and the quarterback's just not moving, and Fields was not getting rid of the ball quickly. So the number's a little bit higher for Membou. I thought he had a nice season though.
Yeah,
Run in.
He looked really good.
Pick number 8 is Tetairoa McMillan, Panthers. Taking McMillan out of Arizona. He looked like wide receiver 1 almost immediately right in the preseason.
Yeah, he did. Again, another sort of weird pre-draft process where it felt like his arc looked a lot like Jordan Tyson's this year, where it's like he started off, everyone thought, way back at the beginning, even the college season, it's like, yeah, he's going to be the top, if not 1A of wide receivers. He's going to go in the top 10 somewhere. And then basically the entire pre-draft process was some form of negative on Tetairoa McMillan. It's like, does he really have the speed? Is he really that explosive? Blah, blah, blah. It was just all nitpicking, right? Look at this video from when he was 18 saying he doesn't really love football. Like, everything was negative. And then literally the day of the draft, it's like, actually, by the way, he's probably still really good and goes top 10. And that was the same with Jordan Tyson. The whole thing was negative until he ran his pro day and made a real nice cut on film. It's like, he's a top 10 guy. Two things bizarre the way. I don't know if those are just all fabricated. This is just the world sometimes, this echo chamber we get into as the media, as the outside of the pre-draft process, where this is just the direction of travel is just negative for guys.
Two things that were interesting about him going number 8. The first one was that we found out after the fact that the Rams were trying to trade up to get him at 8. And then the second one that the Panthers reneged and said, no, we're taking him. And the Panthers coming off of, it wasn't a historically bad defense in 2024, but it was one of the worst in NFL history. It was bad.
Yeah.
And they had no pass rushers, and everybody had
them. Taking an edge rusher.
Insert your favorite edge rusher there. Jalen Walker, I think, was the most commonly mocked player to the Panthers. Everybody assumed it was defense. And they go Tetairoa McMillan. I think it was the right move. It was the right play. I think they were locked in to him as this number 1 option for Bryce Young, and they get him. And, look, there were, in hindsight now, there are fair arguments that the Raiders at 6 could have taken him, and the Browns at 5 could have taken him, and the Jets at 7 could have taken him. They all had wide receiver needs, and McMillan has a chance to be a top 5 player in this draft. And he looked great as a rookie. He looked like the true number 1. I think my question for him coming out, he had some weird – I thought he was really good ball skills, catch radius, moved well for his size. There were times he was 2nd and 8 on the second play of a drive, and he just wasn't running hard. I couldn't figure out just weird things that showed up on film where he just lost at the catch point when he probably shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. But I thought he was outstanding as a rookie.
Yep. Plus, he's put on 17 pounds of muscle this offseason like everybody else. So
muscle tracker.
He's good to go.
So in the NFL, difference between the NFL and college. The NFL, you get to hear the individual stories. This guy put on 17. This guy put on 22, blah, blah, blah. In college, they try to, during hype season, they hype up from the strength coach. The strength coach tells you what the team did. And it'll be the team, you get the AI image. The team added 460 pounds of muscle
collectively
this offseason. Body fat is down 9.7% this offseason. The average clean has gone up 129% for university college. And I love that. The strength coach. And then you get into the message boards and they're we got the good strength coach. We just added 590 pounds of muscle. How could we ever lose a game with all that muscle and all that fat that we have drained?
Rugby tots up the total weight of the scrum. Right?
Yeah.
So it's 1,000 whatever kilos against 987 kilos. Wow, this side's going to get wrecked.
Why don't we make that our thing? Why don't we do that with O-line, D-line?
Total weight.
And D-line.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that as a thing and see if there's any signal in there?
Definitely.
We'll make that part of our preview package.
But the problem is, this is where I need...
We have a 300... We have a... What would be a good line?
This is where I need accurate playing weights.
I know you do.
Right?
We have an 1,800-pound offensive line going up against what would be a good D-line? 250 times...
500.
Yeah, 1,000-pound defensive line. And then we'll look at weight discrepancy because the D line's you only have 4 people versus 5,
right?
And they're all going to be the edges are small. They're all smaller. But we got to figure out what the best balance is.
I can't have Mason Graham throw my average out of whack because he's lying about his 315.
Yeah, you
right?
got to trust.
If you're 296, I need to know you're 296. I can't be having this 20-pound
HIPAA violation,
right? I can't be having this 20-pound gray area fuzzy line.
Truth will never come out.
I like
we got to move on.
The total. I don't like just I added 17 pounds of muscle. It's too easy. I like the ones where it's like something specific and esoteric. Like the man had LASIK, so he's now going to be better at focusing on the deep ball. That's my off-season thing that I like.
My 23-year-old off-season, right around Tetairoa's age, I added 17 pounds of muscle and 6 pounds of fat, according to.
Okay.
I added 23 pounds, and according to my body fat percentage, 17 was muscle and 6 was fat. So I'll take it. It was a good off-season.
Yeah,
it was a good off-season for me back when I was 23. Can't do that anymore. Kelvin Banks goes number 9 overall to the New Orleans Saints. They get their left tackle of the future. It was an interesting pick as they had taken Talise Fuanga in the first round the previous year, had him playing left tackle. He goes back to his college position at right tackle last year, and then Banks steps in. And like I said, during the Membou discussion, had a good year. Another one where you're going to lose at times. He had 50 total pressures, I think, allowed. There were some times he just straight up had his hand swiped, was not. He had some clean losses in there, got bulled a couple times. But overall, I thought he moved well in the run game and was a good balance, run block, pass block, did a nice job.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't a surprising pick in terms of, I think, the Saints beat was on it by the time the draft rolled around. But in terms of the pre-draft process, I think this was pretty surprising. Like everyone had soured on Kelvin Banks to a large degree, and he was being seen as a guy that was going to go, in the 20s, maybe lower down in this draft. And then for the Saints to end up taking him in the top 10 still was quite a statement. And I think he backed that up. It was like Membou, but with different press, right? Membou's stock was going up and up throughout the entire pre-draft process. Banks seemed like it was slipping, and the Saints said, no, he's still really good. And he backed that up as a rookie. He looked pretty impressive.
And when you're looking at those 3 tackles, Campbell was seen as a top 5 pick for over a year. Banks was seen as a top 10 caliber tackle for the year going in. Membou was the late riser, but Banks still ended up going 9, and he was the example of, is he going in the teens? Is he, I think Chicago was linked to him a lot. Were they at 13? Or they lower? No, at 10. A lot of people had Banks going 10 to the Bears, or maybe a little bit lower to the Dolphins. I think were a common pick for Banks at the time.
Yeah.
And he was an example of, the tackles will go a little bit higher. Membou's going to be a top 10 player, and Banks is going to be a top 10 player. And I think the Saints are happy with that pick, and then they come back and get Tyler Shuck. Remember early in the Saints process, we were like, are they going to take Shedeur at 9 if he was there? And then it was like pretty quickly found out that he was out, that they were out on him.
Mm-hmm.
Pick 10 was one of the surprises of the draft, and in hindsight, maybe it shouldn't have been. Chicago Bears go Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. The tight ends were getting a lot of hype. Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren. Loveland was getting mocked to the Broncos quite a bit at pick 20, so 10 picks lower. Warren was the guy he went where he was expected to go, 14 to the Colts. That was one of the most common mock draft picks. But Loveland over Warren was not the consensus. Nate Tice, our friend, did like Loveland as tight end 1, and Nate Tice looking pretty good after year 1. Not that Warren did anything wrong, but Loveland was, outstanding as a premier target down the stretch for the Bears.
And by the way, that you mentioned the context to this entire draft, almost for the entirety of it, but certainly beginning, a few picks ago, is the slide of Shedeur Sanders, right? Because at the time, it's like this is a guy who could go, he was the number 2 quarterback on most boards. People were looking for where he could go in the top 10, and then once he starts to get beyond these teams, then it's like, where does he slide to? The Saints, people thought it might draft him. Then the reports were they were out, and then it was like, well, Pittsburgh at 21 is his floor. But then, occasionally somebody was asking the question, well, if he gets past Pittsburgh, how far could he fall, right? And then nobody saw him fall into the 5th round. But this became the story of this entire draft. And, Mel Kiper aside, bitching about it for 3 straight days,
I honestly think that explains a huge amount of the difference in interest year over year between last year's draft and this year's draft is simply no Shedeur Sanders circus. But that's in the background of all this.
I mean, generally, fewer quarterbacks, but yeah, the Shedeur watch was absolutely massive.
Loveland, yeah, I mean, I think both those tight ends look pretty spectacular. They're different types of players. You know, Loveland is more of this sort of dynamic, wide receiver-esque type of tight end, but I think both those guys look like potential superstars. And yeah, it's a pretty impressive statement from the Bears to take Loveland above Tyler Warren, given where they had been as prospects.
Yeah, I think Loveland didn't have to. I mean, they used him in line a little bit, and they relied on him in the run game. And I think that was one of the questions. I think Warren was seen as a better run blocker than Loveland coming out, again, by most, not Nate Tice. He didn't care. He's like, I like Loveland, and think he could hold his own in the run game. And the Bears trusted him, right? They rely on their tight ends to play wide, and they moved him around, right? He became a weapon, but they had him, Cole Kmet. I think as the season went on, they started to isolate him a little bit more and just rely on him as a go-to weapon. And when we think about him going forward, between him and Luther Burden, who we both chose as our breakout player for the Bears, and we thought that Burden was going to be a first-rounder, and they got him in the second, it could look like just such a massive draft for the Bears, getting Loveland at 10, Burden early in the second round. And if Loveland takes another step this year, or even if he just continues where he is, and Burden takes the step that we expect, we're looking at, you get Caleb Williams 1 year, and then Loveland and Burden the next 2 years. What a group of what an addition just to the pass game.
Yeah.
Back-to-back years for the Bears.
No, I mean, he looks like a spectacular dynamic playmaker. Burden looks the same. I mean, if those two guys continue the trajectory that they're on, I think that Bears offense could be phenomenal, particularly Caleb Williams, same thing.
And again, I was wondering about Loveland's ability to hold up in the run game. I thought he did a nice job as their move tight end. They put him as the H-back, either move or, you still have to make some inline blocks there with Cole Kmet as the Y. I thought he did a really nice job with that as well. So excellent all-around season for Colston Loveland. And I was surprised that he went at 10, but the Bears, I think, looking pretty good taking him at 10. Nothing against Warren at 14. I think there's also a case where maybe Warren's better 1 year and Loveland's better the next year. We'll see what happens. But that was the first. I think that was one of the big surprises of this draft. And the Bears are looking good for it so far.
Yep.
Mykel Williams goes number 11, Georgia edge rusher for the San Francisco 49ers. Gets injured pretty early on in the season, but the concerns for him coming out were just pass rushing dynamism. He's a long player. He's more of I want to say Jadeveon Clowney, but Clowney was really athletic.
And explosive.
But it was a Clowney. Like, remember, I'm thinking Clowney from his I had a better comp for Mykel Williams than Clowney, I think. But style-wise, or like production-wise, better in the run game than he was as a pass rusher. Clowney, that's what I expected from Mykel Williams. I think we saw that in year one.
Yeah, he was weird. He went in and around where he was supposed to go. Like, this is the right kind of area for him. He just never blew me away as a prospect. He's this sort of long – he was one of those guys that was often talked about as like a long, explosive – athletic type of prospect, and that's, and then the production hadn't necessarily caught up with that. But I don't think he blew anybody away with his athleticism testing. It was just he's 6'5", 265 and long, right? I thought, well, that's good, but that's even less of a selling point than a guy who's got all of the physical traits and hasn't yet translated to being a really high-impact pass rusher. I guess the problem is if you were a Mykel Williams skeptic, you would all of your fears were founded in year one with the addition of he got hurt and didn't get a chance to, it's not like it's a fair evaluation after the first year, but, didn't make a ton of impact, wasn't dominant in any aspect, and didn't look overwhelmingly sort of physically dynamic to the point where he'll definitely get it because look at those physical traits. He was okay.
I'll give you some comps of players that were, when he was coming out, had similar draft scores as him, because he had a mediocre draft score for me, dead smack in the middle. But guys that were similar but also projected to go in the first round. Kayvon Chason, who went in the first, obviously. Lucas Van Ness, Bud Dupree, Greg Rousseau, Trayvon Walker, Charles Harris, Cleveland Farrell. And so most of that list, besides Rousseau's become an outstanding player, and I think that his low draft score is in part because he had to opt out of his final season. It was COVID related. He probably would have been higher. The other players would have been cautionary tales for drafting Mykel Williams that high at the time. And maybe after year one, even though he got hurt, still perhaps a cautionary tale. And the similarities are, if I was describing Van Ness's game, say, I'd say, yeah, this dude plays with some power, sets a hard edge in the run game. I don't trust him winning one-on-one enough as a pass rusher. And that's still the question with Mykel Williams. He's really young, came out as a 21-year-old. I think the power was evident. The length was evident. It showed up in the run game. Pass rush win rate about 8-9% last year, well below average. And I think that's still a concern. Just not enough total wins, not enough pure clean wins as a pass rusher just yet. So I think at worst, he becomes, like the old school base defensive ends that can set the edge and do a really nice job. Actually, some of his best rushes were on the interior, actually similar to like Trayvon Walker his first year. It's like, hey, you put him against guards, he might be able to do some damage, and maybe the Niners can move him around going forward to create some mismatches because of the length. But I think he's got a ways to go as a pass rusher, and I think he could be a pretty good hard edge setting run defender.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which were my thoughts coming out, and haven't changed them since then.
Underwhelming rookie season it certainly doesn't make you more optimistic for what Mykel Williams can be at the next level.
Number 12 overall, Tyler Booker goes to the Dallas Cowboys, the guard out of Alabama. This was a surprise as well because he went from expected best top guard off the board, and then he started dropping and going in the 20s. And I think by draft time, consensus board had him in the high 20s or maybe in the 30s.
Yeah, pretty low.
And then he goes at 12. Rumors after the fact, it's Jerry Jones, it's truth, basically said they were debating between Tyler Booker and Walter Nolen. Nolen goes at 16, and Nolen smoked Booker one-on-one in one of their games. I just think that's fun. I think it's really fun when we know an either-or for a team just to see how that plays out. But Booker had a really nice rookie season. I had some concerns coming out. I think he handled some of those, though, for me.
Yeah, he did. I thought he impressed. Dallas has got this, if you're – The book on Tyler Booker is that his performance, his on-field play had been pretty good, but he had a pretty terrible athletic profile. And if you're going to take a guy 12 overall, particularly as a guard, you want no missing piece in the profile, right? You want both the athleticism and the on-field production. They only had one. It's like he's got the on-field production, but a concerning physical profile. That really didn't show up in his rookie season. He was a good run blocker. He didn't lose that often. You didn't look at this guy saying this is the way he moves, this sort of slow, limited athleticism. It's a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. He looked pretty good. And that, other than, Tyler Guyton hasn't worked out, but Dallas does have this pretty good track record of drafting these guys, even if there's a big missing piece of the profile puzzle.
Yeah, Booker always had this strength that I think you saw and evident on tape. I think that showed up absolutely in the run game. My concern was the athletic profile was similar to players like Osiris Torrance, who I think has been below average to average at best, and it shows up. I thought in college, a little late to react to stunts and just use your feet to get in front. It's almost like Will Campbell, but in a different way. But your limitation is. With Will Campbell, his technique needs to be perfect because he doesn't have the physicality to maybe overcome it. With Booker, it's like he could get away with lesser footwork or agility because he's got gets a hands on you. Similar to Ioane coming out this year, I think they're just so strong. Yeah, and I think Booker's production in year one bodes well for a guy like Ioane, who I think there's some similarities to their game. So. I still want to look back at Walter Nolen versus Tyler Booker, right? The Cowboys, this was before they traded Micah Parsons, but still felt like they've been looking for defensive tackle upgrades for a decade over there before they traded for Quinnen Williams. But they also have a history of drafting first-round Tylers on the offensive line. So they had to go with that. You got to go with the analytics of Tyler Guyton and Tyler Smith and Tyler Booker.
The more Tylers you can accumulate.
No, Booker, he did a nice job as a rookie, as the 12th overall pick. Kenneth Grant goes next, defensive tackle out of Michigan, going to the Miami Dolphins at pick 13. You were a big Kenneth Grant fan.
Yeah.
He did underwhelm a little bit as a rookie, though.
He did.
Better as the year went on, like some others.
Big Kenneth Grant fan. I liked the landing spot in terms of if they were going to draft him this high, I felt like that boded well for what they were going to use him as. Because Kenneth Grant, the big nose tackle type of body, in my opinion, watching his college tape, he's actually better he's almost like a 3-tech trapped in a nose tackle's body. And his best wins come in non-nose tackle ways. They're not necessarily the, anchor at the point, play the run, eat up space. They're actually quickness. They're like little swim moves against players one-on-one and penetrating into the backfield. So I felt like if you're drafting him at 13 overall, you're going to cut him loose and make him more of a pass rushing threat than he ever was in college. And then you didn't really see a ton of that. And also he wasn't that great at the run stuffing stuff either as a rookie. So, yeah, generally not a great season, I think, from him.
Yeah, I mean, even though, as you said, like you wouldn't say like two-gapping nose tackle is necessarily his game, I was disappointed in how easily he was moved, especially early in the season. Like I was disgusted by the Dolphins' run defense. Disgusted.
Nice.
By their run defense for much of the year, other than Jordan Brooks. Jordan Brooks was he officially an All-Pro? Like Jordan Brooks having an All-Pro season behind that defensive line is a minor miracle. So I was disappointed early on by Grant getting moved too easily. Not as disruptive as you expected. I did think it got better as the year went on and still believe in him as a player. I expect a better year 2, but I think he was just a part of this group. Chop Robinson took a step back. Grant was disappointing. It was just all disappointing.
Yeah.
They got better as the schedule got easier, right? Remember there was some people in the media, our friends, your DM friends, saying, watch out, don't sleep on the Dolphins. And I was like, wait, they just played the Jets twice or whatever their schedule was. It's like they just played the Jets and the Cardinals. They just played the worst teams in the league and went from 1-7 to like 6-7, whatever it was. So they were disappointing overall, but I thought Grant improved a little bit as the year went on, and we'll see if he could build on that in year 2. New scheme, new system.
Yeah.
Tyler Warren goes 14, tight end out of Penn State, going to the Colts. The chalkiest pick of the draft, perhaps.
Yeah.
Like this late in the draft,
right.
He was expected to go there.
Yeah, this may have been the most common player to team pick in the entire draft process, Tyler. The only thing people didn't expect was for him to be the second tight end off the board at that point. Everyone expected the Colts to take Tyler Warren, just nobody really expected Colston Loveland to have already been selected by the time that happened. But it made total sense. Like the Colts had the worst tight end room in the NFL. Absent Tyler Warren, he comes in, answers, and it was also the biggest hole in the roster. He comes in, solves both those problems immediately, and hit the ground running. Just looked like a top-tier tight end right out of the box. I think is still a top-tier tight end capable player, good in all aspects of the game. Maybe not quite as dynamic as some other players at that position, but just good at everything, like really good at everything.
The tight end screen to Tyler Warren was like a cheat code. Once a week, they would run that thing, automatic first down, the first 10 weeks of the season. I think Warren, I don't know where things end up with him versus Loveland. They'll always be paired together as the 2 first-round tight ends going in the top 14, and Loveland had slightly better receiving numbers at the end of the season last year. But I wouldn't be surprised if Warren, like I said earlier, surpasses him in certain years. I think they moved him around a ton. Like he was doing I can't remember if it was direct snaps or if he was doing the sneaks. I don't even know if it was tush push, but sneaks. They were just doing a lot with Tyler Warren. Screen game, moving him around, putting him in the backfield. They asked a lot of him, much like Penn State asked a lot of him and targeted him a ton. And I think he will continue to just be a QB-friendly, dependable, underneath option who can stretch the seam, use his ball skills, get grimy in the run game when you need to. I think he's a really good all-around tight end. I will perhaps step back from my initial stance at that time that the tight ends were overrated. I didn't want to take either of these tight ends that high.
You hated the
I didn't want to. I didn't feel good about it.
No.
I will back off that take here a year later.
Good.
And say Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland.
Because it was wrong.
Worth top 15 picks.
Yeah.
Because it was wrong.
Yeah.
I've been wrong before. It's not often, but we list it when we are wrong.
No, it's good. It's good.
Pick 15. This is where the draft gets fun. Do we want to do the 2 Falcons picks?
Yeah, why
back
not?
to back? Terry Fontenot, rest in peace. Not he's still alive, but as the Falcons GM.
Not professionally. Yeah.
Professionally.
With the Falcons, at least.
For the second straight year, Terry Fontenot gives us just some awesome fodder. He was very aggressive and gives us some of the best use case, the best case studies that we'll ever have. The case study of drafting Mykel Penix Jr. at 8 when you've already paid a free agent, Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
Do you overcommit to the quarterback position? TBD. Not looking great so far, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And you got fired.
Yeah.
And then they overcommit to the pass rush. Hey, you've had a pass rush issue for 10 years.
But
You've been
here's the thing.
drafting first-round edge rushers for 10
Right.
years.
But we didn't know it at the time. So for 10 picks or whatever it is, we're just like standard, okay, Atlanta addressed their biggest need. They went edge rusher. They bring in Jalen Walker, who himself was an interesting prospect because he's this hybrid player at the college level. They lined him up in a sort of true hybrid alignment, but without true hybrid responsibilities, if that makes any sense, right? So they would line him up as a sort of off-the-ball linebacker, but they weren't asking him to do the type of off-the-ball linebacker things that, say, Arvell Reese was being asked to do, right? He was just like, spot drop into this shallow zone and take that away, right? Don't turn and run with a tight end or anything. But he was a legitimate hybrid player for whom some projection was therefore going to be required to this next level. Point is, it sort of made sense, right? It was an interesting pick. It made sense. It's the edge rusher that Atlanta's needed for years. They address it in the first round. And then we have like 10 picks of just like, ho-hum, on with the draft. And then the Falcons shock everybody. And it's like, oh, they're trading back into the first round, itself obviously news in any given draft, for a second edge rusher. And not just any second edge rusher, but a guy with the most red flags of, off-field character concerns you're going to find. He's the guy they're trading a future first-round pick for, James Pearce. Yeah.
So they take Jalen Walker at 15 and then James Pearce Jr. at 26. They trade back up with the Rams. Mm-hmm. The Rams trade down.
Having previously tried to trade up.
And again, we didn't know that on draft night. We found out after that the Rams two options were we're going to trade up to 8 or out of 26.
Under no circumstances
down,
are we
like
using our own pick.
Or something, right? And then they get next year's first rounder. So the 2 picks by the Falcons. I call this the great case study because you have the pristine character Jalen Walker. Everybody loves him at Georgia, but also not a low production player, but a low snap count player in the hybrid role, as you said.
Question mark. Yeah.
Yeah, like you saw him. He had some really nice flashes of winning one-on-ones, but maybe not at a high level. And he just didn't play on the edge. He played like 300, 400 edge snaps total. And then you have Pearce, who at one point was talked about, is this guy going number 1 overall?
Yeah.
He's a top 10 type of pick. Is he heavy enough? But then you've got the off-field concerns. Did he progress enough? You were concerned about, hey, he wins a lot but doesn't finish plays and, can't really tackle a whole lot. And then you've got all of the red flags at Tennessee. And they were like, we're taking both of these guys. And they had one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL going into the season. They had invested in the defensive line the previous year, but all in rounds 2, 3, and 4. And they were like, nope, 2 first-rounders, we're doing it. And look, I think they hit on the players themselves. And then Pearce has the off-field incident, and we have no idea what the rest of his career is going to look like. But he had the 10-plus sack season, 10-sack season, whatever it was. Thought he was pretty good overall. Thought Jalen Walker was very good overall. Thought he was really impressive in the run game, the way he played on the edge and took to a full-time role there. I think they've got two good players going forward. But some of the concerns with Pearce obviously showed up with the incident this offseason that he's now that has, I guess, been resolved.
Yeah. It's such a wild just approach to the draft. Like they normally, aside from anything else, like we talk about teams double dipping at positions all the time, but it's like with a first and a third rounder, right? It's not, we already took the guy in the first round of 15 overall. Let's trade next year's first round pick, which ended up being the 13th overall pick when all was said and done, for another guy at the same position.
It's in Mike, throw Mike Green in there too. I think when we did our edge rankings, I think I had Abdul Carter 1 and then Mike Green and James Pearce 2 and 3 with my big caveat. Like, I think they're top 10 to 15 type of prospects, but they both have off-field for different reasons. Don't know where they're going to fall in the draft. Mike Green falls all the way to the second, and then Pearce falls to 26. So I'm imagining the same draft room. They may have had Pearce higher than Walker as a player. just on film alone, and then with Walker, because of the potential, the upside, and the character, they took him first. And then they just said, well, what if we took both?
Yeah. I mean, this was also a very strange year in terms of edge rusher prospects, right? You had Mykel Williams, who we've talked about as long, run defense, not tremendously spectacular as a productive as a pass rusher. You had Jalen Walker, who we said is a hybrid type of player. You've got Shemar Stewart, who we're coming up on, just this incredible athlete, but incredibly unproductive. Then James Pearce Jr., all kinds of character red flags, who had been very productive. And then Mike Green, who you mentioned as well, very productive at Marshall, and all kinds of character concerns as well. So it's a very strange group of edge rushers to be trying to pick.
I talk about the what ifs a lot. There was a lot of significant, they were just all different what ifs, but significant ones.
Major red flags, right?
Production, off field, competition level, they were significant.
So, which is interesting in terms of which ones you're going to pick, but also for Atlanta to be we want two of these guys. We want two massive question marks to try and solve that spot.
One thing we don't have to maybe project is Jeff Ulbricht's back as defensive coordinator for the Falcons. They didn't necessarily I thought Walker could have been great doing some linebacker things or spying quarterbacks, and maybe that's still part of his future. But they just put him on the edge. They put Pearce on the edge. I think they've got their two future bookends as long as Pearce stays out of trouble going forward. And I think they got two good players. Now, in hindsight, would they have rathered have the 13th overall pick this year instead of Pearce? I don't know if that's truly the case. But it did maybe hamstring the new regime, because you know what you have, and then you're trying to improve the roster, and you're unable to without a first-round pick this year.
But also, by the way, even if you assume for that exact either-or, right, James Pearce Jr., who you traded into the first round to get with his character question marks, which have already raised their head as a problem, right, even if he got away with it this time around. That's clearly he's only ever 5 minutes away from catastrophe. If you kept the 13th overall pick, Ruben Bain was an option. Would you rather have James Pearce Jr. or Ruben Bain? That's an actual either-or option the Falcons had, right?
It's a fair question. And I like Pearce. I like Pearce as a player. I think he'll be okay. I know Louis Riddick loves him and was telling everybody I loved him and he had the most sacks, just reminding people.
Oh, so I was right.
He was right. He's always right.
Yeah.
A lot of people like Pearce, but that's a fair question. Would you rather have Pearce or Ruben Bain? But you can't see the future. Plus, Terry never got to use that pick.
Correct.
Either. We're at pick 16, 6 hours into this thing. Mm-hmm. Walter Nolen, Arizona Cardinals, goes at 16. Another guy, now a lot of us, I liked him going at 17 to the Bengals, the next pick there. This is in and around where we expected, but there were some rumors that off-field questions with Nolen would have had him drop, but the Cardinals took him, and he missed the beginning of the season with injury. Comes in, makes a splash, gets injured again, but he looked really good in limited time last year.
Yeah, multiple injuries kind of derailed his rookie season, but when he was out there, he did look like an impact player. And he was also, you're right, he was a strange prospect. He seemed to have a very wide range of opinions on him. There were people that thought he was a top 10 player. There were people that thought he was a day 2 player. I think he's already shown in 6 games that he's closer to the first than the second. But because he only played sparingly because of the 2 injuries, we didn't really get to see what he's capable of.
I was pretty impressed by Nolen. I think he's is he around 300 pounds? What's his official weight? I mean, he plays strong. I think his strength impressed me last year, and just overall quickness. I think just that combination, he's very disruptive. I mean, he had, like a lot of them, double team issues getting moved at the point of attack, but when he was one-on-one, he was dominant. He was able to move blockers back, reset the line of scrimmage. I think there's a lot to like about Walter Nolen.
Listed at 300 on the button.
Yeah, I mean, I think he plays again when you're taking on a guard tackle double team, you're probably going to lose, and most of them do. But when he's one-on-one, he's really disruptive, and so I think he's one of the pivotal players this year because he's got so much potential at pick 16. Where are we at now?
17, Shemar Stewart.
This is where we could take a break and talk about FanDuel.
The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every goal changes everything. Now, FanDuel is giving you a reason to root for every single one. Introducing Every Goal Pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. That's right. More goals means more bonus bets, and all you have to do is to turn on your token. I'm going to be honest, we're pre-recording this, so let's hope that France is still in it when they've just beaten, presumably, Paraguay. They look like the team to beat. They look pretty much unstoppable. We will see if anybody can rise to the challenge that France is laying down right now, unless they lost, in which case it's Paraguay's from here on out. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/33rd to get started now. 21 plus in selected states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus in DC, Kentucky, and Wyoming. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777. Visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY in New York.
All right, pick number 17, the Cincinnati Bengals. Man, we had some talking points here. Shemar Stewart, the edge rusher, out of Texas A&M. So, one of the freakiest athletes coming out, didn't do the change of direction, right?
In a straight line, yeah.
In a straight line.
I think a fairly important part to his makeup that doesn't get talked about enough. It was being comped to guys like Trayvon Walker as like one of the freakiest pass rushing prospects to ever enter the NFL. It's like, yeah, with the caveat that he didn't do anything that shows change of direction, and that did look like a problem on tape. Like that's why I think it's important. It's not that it was just a missing part of his athletic profile. It's specifically that it was a missing part of his athletic profile at an area where the tape suggested might be a problem. That, I think, was the red flag involved in that.
So Shemar Stewart's season was really interesting, and the whole pre-draft process, right? I mean, he only had one sack his final year. When people talk about, we use the word production and describe something like a PFF grade or pass rush win rate, or we describe it differently. Other people say, well, he didn't have a sack, he only had a sack or whatever. Yeah. Either way, in this case, either one works. If you want to say he only had one sack his last year at Texas A&M, how do you take him in the first round? If you want to say his advanced grades or stats or whatever weren't good, either way, it felt like a production question. But the guy's, 6'6", 290. He had the one rep at the Senior Bowl where he just bull rushes John Conerly. It was Mike Green got Conerly. He bull rushes somebody into oblivion and then just like gets in his car and takes off.
Yep.
So fascinating pre-draft process. And then we were wondering, like, in the year 2025, where there's so much data out there, and a lot of the data says, man, if you're not a productive pass rusher in college, you probably aren't going to do it at the next level. But if you're going to improve, you probably have to be a freak athlete like Shemar Stewart. So the Bengals take the chance. And I'm thinking, this isn't the type of guy that I like to buy into. Doesn't usually work out. And then I started to doubt myself almost immediately, because you saw him, he missed time in the preseason, but when he showed up, he's running through people. And then he shows up week one, a few pressures, disruptive in the run game, and I'm like, well, maybe they're just right.
Yeah.
But then it just tapers off.
Best game of his rookie season was his debut.
Yes. And then it tapers off. He gets hurt.
Yep.
Comes back for 3 games, gets hurt, and then finishes in the last 3 games. And then the totality of the production, if you're using PFF, it's a 41 grade with only 13 pressures and 1 sack. Now, so if you just told me that in a vacuum, I'd say, of course, low production college player, of course he's not going to hit the ground running in the NFL. The way I would skew positive for Shemar Stewart is the other additions to this defensive line. The fact that they added Cassius Howell on the other side, his former teammate. The fact that they added Dexter Lawrence and Boye Mafe, and now I have always called Shemar Stewart the bull in a china shop, where he might not win and finish plays, but kind of like Verse. Like if the criticism of Verse was, what if he just bull rushes and he can't disengage and get those sack totals? You only had 6 sacks per year for Verse. I don't think it's a good criticism, but that's the criticism. But what if Shemar Stewart's that guy, just the run-through-your-face guy? And it sets up Mafe and Howell and Dexter Lawrence, and they're setting him up with single teams, with one-on-ones. So I think there's room to improve and maybe tap into that potential. But he was always a buyer beware prospect because he was so unproductive in college.
Yeah, I mean he is an interesting guy though, in that you only ever need to watch half a dozen snaps of him to be like, okay, I get it. I would bet on that. And again, even in the NFL, like the first things, one of the first game he shows up to, it's like, wow, that's impressive, but it just doesn't last. It doesn't.
It's a consistency thing, right? Football is about being good for hundreds of snaps, not a couple, which is why we hate sack totals.
Yeah, and I think
you're looking at 1% of your snaps.
And I think the problem is if you don't have other ways to win, NFL players are too good, and they'll be able to work against the thing that you're good at, right? So even if he does have this amazing bull rush ability and incredible straight line burst and power and strength, if they know they don't have to worry about anything else, they'll set against that, right? And ultimately, you're still trying to bull rush a guy that weighs 315 pounds and is bigger than you are, right? And that guy's probably going to have a pretty good shot of anchoring against you. So I think that's the problem with a guy like Shemar Stewart, is that he needs to show that he's got other ways of winning than that incredible burst and get off and power, right? And at the moment, he hasn't done that.
So Shemar Stewart at 17, and then I want to say that was a surprise, but he was another guy we were trying to figure out, like, who's going to take a chance on the trait, who's going to bet on the traits in the athleticism, and will it be that high? Could he fall to the second? Bengals take him at 17. I think they also saw the run. I think they would have loved to have Walter Nolen or maybe Jalen Walker or some of these other defensive linemen that went ahead of him. Gray Zabel at 18 for the Seattle Seahawks.
Loved it.
And you loved it because you said, do it, John. Pick a guard in the first round. It's your biggest need. We had 2 guard needs going to the draft. Take one. Fill a need. Do it directly. Don't worry about positional value. Just do it. You told him to do it. Mm-hmm. He listened.
He did. He listened.
And won a Super Bowl.
Yep. Speaks for itself.
Best pick of the draft.
Yeah. I mean, this was about as high as Gray Zabel's draft stock got as well. Like, he was seen as a sort of day 2 prospect and then just absolutely dominated the Senior Bowl and was someone, again, whose stock was on the rise and on the rise and on the rise all the way through. Another one of those North Dakota State offensive linemen. And then, the Seahawks end up taking him number 18 overall as the answer to their guard problem that they've had for a couple of years. And it worked out great for them.
He had a really good season, played the whole year, ton of snaps. I think he really helped in the run game. And he had his losses. I mean, again, rookies they're gonna have their losses. As long as they're not completely overwhelmed, you're gonna see them probably progress on the offensive line. But I think he added value to the run game, especially down the stretch. Remember, that run game was inconsistent. There was the point where they were a high-volume run game in Seattle to nowhere. And it was like, well, Darnold's season's even more impressive because they're running in volume but not effectively. They started to run effectively down the stretch. Charbonnet had some big games. Walker had some big games. I think Zabel's ability to run block in the zone game, he moved really well, took to the guard, kicking into guard extremely well. Got to the second level, cutting off linebackers, helped create some big plays for the run game down the stretch. So he had a really nice season, and obviously it worked. They won the Super Bowl, so you can't doubt it. But his rise, though, our friend Dane Brugler, as often is the case, was early on Zabel. It was like, hey, you could go in the second.
Yeah,
you could go top 40, and then we all go to the Senior Bowl. And if you're consuming Senior Bowl content from multiple sources, all you're hearing about is Gray Zabel. Because he was in there at all 5 offensive line spots.
Yep.
Pass pro, outstanding, and just making a name for himself at the Senior Bowl. And then could he go first round? Could he go late first? And as you said, not many people had him going as high as top 18. But the Seahawks, for makes it unique in two ways. The fact that Gray Zabel went that high, but also that they took a guard, which they had never done, and said, it's too acute of a need. We got to do it. And they, the move paid off for him.
Yep. Great move.
So that's pick 18. Pick 19, Emeka Egbuka, Tampa Bay Bucks, taking him, wide receiver out of Ohio State. Egbuka was a fun pre-draft process because he was one of those guys where we all said, hey, I think the film says the same thing. It's speaking to us in all the same way.
Yeah.
And then it came down to how do you value what you just described on film?
Yeah.
You see a Z, a slot. He's good at pretty much everything, but he's not, great. He's not great at anything. You could probably put him in the slot, get a ton of production out of him, but could you say that about a lot of receivers? Can he truly play X? And if he doesn't play X, does that immediately say, he can't really be a top 5 receiver? So all those questions came up. I was more likely to buy into Egbuka than you were. I looked really smart early in the season compared to you, but then he either got hurt and that's why things tapered off, or the league caught up to him and that's why things tapered off, and it all landed somewhere in between.
And then you've got the extra element of this of Tampa Bay was the team that drafted him, and everyone immediately went, what? Tampa Bay, they've got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Like, they've already got a receiver room stuffed full of receivers. What are they doing drafting a guy in the first round? That's crazy. You're like, yeah, but, you don't draft for 1 year, right? A, all those guys got hurt, and he ended up being their number one wide receiver immediately. And B, apparently we're only ever a year away from, Mike Evans is now out of town. And, this is like, think beyond 5 minutes for a second when you're in the draft, right?
Look at the two differences of the last two picks. The Seahawks may have waited multiple years and said, okay, now we have to take a guard. And in my mind, historically, you don't want to do that. You don't want to get into a world where you have to fill a spot. But the draft community tends to just bump up in their head, oh, you filled a need, good draft pick. And then you have someone like the Bucs, and the draft community doesn't love when you fill a non-perceived need. But I love it. I love when you take Egbuka's going to be number 4 in the depth chart. Well, Jalen McMillan got hurt. Well, Mike Evans gets banged up. And then Mike Evans is going to walk in a year. And so I love when teams go with the non-acute need selection.
There are very few positions in today's NFL where a guy selected in the first round is like blocked from the field for multiple years, right? Like, generally speaking, A, there's another position potentially they could sneak in at early, or B, you're a year removed from like one guy that's on the top of the depth chart leaving or being traded, like whatever. There's a way to the field pretty quickly for these guys, right? Receiver, it's easier than any because number one, you can get 3 guys on the field anyway if you want to. So you can rotate and blah blah blah. There are other positions where it's harder, but most of the time, even if he can't start day or year 1, he's in there year 2, right? It's like, and that's fine. Sure, you're giving up 1 year, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, very rare is that you're like, this is an idiotic pick because this guy's got no way of playing football for 3 years or whatever.
This pick and the next pick were really interesting, and they had different outcomes.
Right.
I've got a soft spot for the non-need pick. Yeah, just draft the best player. Just, it'll all work out. Your needs change daily. And in my theory, it looks really good with Egbuka in the Bucs because they had the injuries. He looked like he could play X. He was the guy that was dominating the Super Bowl champion Seahawks when the Bucs put up 38 or whatever they put on them. Egbuka looked great. Then he got hurt, things slowed down, or maybe you thought he just came down to earth. Whatever happened, but I think Egbuka is going to be a really good player. Love that pick for the Bucs, and he looked great as a rookie. Then you have pick 20, Jahdae Barron, another non-need pick. They have Pat Surtain. They have Riley Moss. They have Jaquan McMillan playing the slot. There's no place for Jahdae Barron. And there wasn't because none of those guys got hurt, and they all played reasonably well. And Barron, when he did get out there, when they mixed him up and had him covering tight ends or whatever it was, that didn't look great in year 1 and in year 2. The difference here, Egbuka in year 2, it's like, well, the path is open. Evans is gone. We know we're going to use you. With Barron, it's the same 3 guys that are in front of him. I still loved the pick at the time, but you just didn't get much out of Barron as a rookie.
Well, he's the example that proves the rule in terms of, this is going in year 2 now where it doesn't look like there's an obvious pathway to the field for Jahdae Barron, even though theoretically, given what he was coming out, he might be able to play any of the 5 positions in the secondary, right? Any of the safety spots, corner, slot corner, he might be able to do any of those, and they still can't get him on the field.
I thought his versatility would have still played. Like if what he did at Texas, they drop him down, play a little linebacker, play safety, play one-on-one against Jeremiah Smith. He looked lost at times last year and just had some bad reps. Not a lot of reps, but he had some bad reps in there. And I still think Denver's better for having him on the roster and the depth that he brings and the future-proofing of a position where you need depth at the secondary. They just, in year 1, didn't need him. But I think I still like him as a player. I think he'll have more success going forward.
Hopefully, yeah, because it didn't look great year 1.
All right, Derrick Harmon. Pick 21 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, big nose tackle out of Oregon.
Made sense as a draft pick, I think. Obviously, Cameron Hayward's getting up there in years. Doesn't seem to make any impact to how well he plays. Keeps on going. But this was a team, I think, that had a potential need, at least in the future, at defensive tackle. And Harmon was a guy that was supposed to go in and around this area. So it made sense as a selection.
This was part of, I think, some of my optimism for the Steelers when you had Harmon in there and Cameron Hayward and He was a little up and down last year. I think he had some times where he's disruptive in the run game. Other times I think he's getting hooked, getting moved. 23 total pressures on 304 pass rushes. That's okay. So again, I think it was an okay rookie season for Derrick Harmon. I think Steelers fans were pretty happy with him overall, but saw some issues there, run game and pass rush effectiveness. But I thought coming out, he moved really well. He transferred from Michigan State to Oregon, was really disruptive on Oregon's team. I think he's got more juice in the tank as far as rushing the passer goes compared to last year. Probably ask a little bit more of him this year. And he was, I would say, more stout in the run game than I thought. But coming out, I thought he played high and got moved at times. And I think that showed up on the rookie film.
Yeah, I expected him to make a bigger impact as a pass rusher than he did last season. Again, maybe like the whole defensive tackle class seemed to underwhelm a little bit. So maybe that takes longer to adjust than you picture in your brain. But I think he needs to take that step this year.
Yeah, Harmon, Grant, Mason Graham, you could make the case all a little bit below maybe what we expected. Maybe Walter, Nolen didn't.
Nolen's the only guy that didn't, but he only played 6 games or whatever.
They all underwhelmed just a little bit compared to expectation. All right, pick 22, Omarion Hampton, the running back out of UNC, going to the Chargers.
Yeah,
Second
so another
running back
one
off the board.
Yeah, another interesting one because, second, first round running back, and that's obviously always a discussion point. I think some people are a little bit low on him after that rookie season because the numbers weren't great. I think, again, I would make the obvious point that offensive line was absolute abject misery, and I thought every time Hampton was on the field, he looked really good. But he was hurt. They didn't see that much of him. They had to rely on other players, but I thought he looked legit when he was on the field.
I agree. My concerns, very earlier in the year, I remember that first game, he didn't run out of bounds.
Right.
Or he ran out of bounds when he shouldn't have, just general football awareness stuff. He was an interesting running back prospect to evaluate because I thought he was so much better. Just get him downhill with a puller, running power, running counter, but his general zone instincts and feel weren't great. And that fit for Greg Roman, the old offensive coordinator. They're going to run downhill a little bit more. They're going to run more power counter historically, but now he's got Mike McDaniel.
Yeah.
And actually don't know if that's a great fit. He wasn't great at stick your foot in the ground, get downhill as a zone runner. He was a little hesitant at UNC. But when he gets it, I think the speed, power, and athleticism are all legit, right? They're all really good when he gets to the second level. So I think he could still be a really good player. I'm curious about the fit with McDaniel. I'm not saying he can't do it. I just don't know if that is best for him. I think McDaniel's going to elevate that offense in other ways. I'm just not sure if Hampton's the guy or not.
I'm excited for what he can do year 2. I think a lot of people should expect a big, an improved outlook from Justin Herbert, though I think he actually played really well last year. But because the offensive line's better.
We all know that you do.
Receivers improved. I think people are expecting that kind of improvement in status for Herbert, but I think Hampton might see a similar one as well because of the same things.
So it's Omarion Hampton going. The other curious thing, you've got Joe Ortiz being the GM coming from the Ravens. We're like, it's the Ravens. They would never, Ravens regime would never. They've got all the smart people moving to the Chargers. They would never take a running back in the first round, and they did. They did go running back with Hampton in the first round. Pick 23, the Green Bay Packers finally take a wide receiver in the first round. Never do it. Speaking of trends, I like that the trends got broken in a few cases here in this draft. Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. Remember his whole pre-draft process where I thought he felt like a Romeo Doubs type of receiver, good route runner, he's going to get open. Didn't feel that dynamic on film. I know some of our listeners were like, hey, go back to Houston film. He looks more dynamic. But he didn't break out for Texas till the second half of the season. But then he runs sub 4.3 at the combine, and that was a surprise to most of us.
It was. And even he was quite a divisive prospect as well. There were people out there, I think it was Pete Schrager, who was saying, this guy is wide receiver 1 in the draft class. He could be that kind of player.
Daniel Jeremiah said he.
Maybe it was Jeremiah. Maybe I'm confusing the two. But there were people out there that had Golden as the best receiver in this prospect or thought he could become that guy. I never really saw that from his tape. And I also never really saw 4.2 speed either. He looked solidly quick, not wow, this guy's going to run in the 4.2s quick. If you were picking one of the Texas wide receivers to do that, it would have been Isaiah Bond. And he was the guy that went to the combine saying he was going to break the record and then ran a 4.4 flat or whatever. But he seemed solid across the board. Like, I didn't hate him as a prospect. I just didn't see anything that I particularly loved. He was a weird prospect in terms of late breakout, relative lack of overall sort of overwhelming production, and then this sort of weird aspect of, did anybody see 4.2 on tape before he ran one? And then the Packers select him in the first round. He has one of the kind of quietest, most unproductive rookie seasons of any first-round wide receiver you're going to find. But I actually thought the tape looked pretty good. Like, the tape looked similar to the Texas stuff, right? It was good overall, nothing necessarily insane, but like, I didn't see why he was seeing this sort of complete lack of production. I thought so I'm still relatively optimistic in terms of what he can do in this offense, particularly because they've cleared the pathway for him a little bit.
But he pretty much comes in as wide receiver 4 last year. I know there were some injuries and people in and out.
But everybody was wide receiver 4 in Green Bay's
Everybody's
roster.
wide receiver 4.
Yeah.
We saw him in person, saw the dynamism and everything, so that helps. But yeah, I expect more at a year 2 from Matthew Golden as well, and especially with Romeo Doubs out.
And Dontavian Wicks. Like, they've cleared space for him to be a much bigger part of this offense, to the degree that they probably need him to be.
And that's another one, like when we talk about all these draft strategies, you've got Egbuka may have been drafted for year 2 more than year 1, but was needed. Golden, because there wasn't a clear path, maybe for year 2 more than year 1, and that's what is going to materialize. You just don't know how the injury, Barron maybe for the future, and he just never had a chance. Every situation ends up being pretty different. Pick 24, Donovan Jackson, the guard out of Ohio State, to the Minnesota Vikings. This was an interesting pick because Kwesi, the analytics GM, what'd they have, 4 picks coming into the draft? They ended up with 5, if I recall. It's a lot of numbers and stories in my head. I hope I'm pulling the right ones. But we thought they might trade down here. They also had this very acute need. They had filled the center and right guard spots with Ryan Kelly, Will Fries. They needed a left guard. Did they turn down the Texans offer? I'm sorry, the Giants offer to come get Jaxson Dart? I think there was a story that he had turned down that pick, the trade up to maybe accumulate more picks, drop to the 30s.
Right.
They turned it down and said, we're just going to stick and pick and just get our plug-and-play left guard in Donovan Jackson, who had a pretty nice rookie season.
He did, yeah. I thought he looked pretty solid. Again, he's a guy who missed a little bit of time, but I thought generally was reasonably solid when he was out there. Problem is, there was no continuity in that offensive line start to finish. Like, left tackle, Darisaw was in and out of the lineup, and when he wasn't in the lineup, it was a disaster. Center, Ryan Kelly barely played because he kept getting concussed, and now he's out of the league. And then, Will Fries didn't play at the level that he played at before. So the situation either side of Donovan Jackson was chopping and changing, in addition to him dealing with injury himself.
Donovan Jackson, his final season at Ohio State, fascinating path. So he was the left guard where fellow first-rounder Josh Simmons was playing left tackle. Simmons gets hurt, and then Jackson has to kick out to left tackle. His first game's against Penn State and Abdul Carter. And even though Ohio State wins and the offense looks fine, Abdul Carter got him a couple times. Like, he looked like, hey, this is a guard kicking out to left tackle. This might not go well. But Donovan Jackson finishes the season playing left tackle at Ohio State, and they win the national title, and he looked good. I mean, he just got better as the season went on. And
I think you saw those pass-blocking chops as a rookie. Like, he can move. He's got the athleticism. There were some times he struggled with strength. You would assume that improves going forward year 2. And beyond, he's got the size for it. So I think overall you would say that's been a solid pick for them.
Yeah, I think it was a solid pick, and I think it was interesting thought process that they could have traded down into the 30s. I forget the exact board, but I think Jackson may have been the last guard that could have gone in the top 40 or 50. I don't remember specifically. Now Tate Ratledge was there later, and
Jonah Savanaia was the next guard off the board.
Yeah,
at 37, but
just an interesting decision for the Vikings that they could have maybe gotten to 34 probably,
and then Ratledge would have been the next guy.
Yeah. But they risk losing Jackson, but I think Kwesi was hell bent on, we're fixing this offensive line and we're going to go 2 free agents in a first rounder.
The other thing, I mean, it's easy to say now because of the way their season went, but like at that point they would have been expecting to contend again, right? Like their
J.J. McCarthy
expectation
was going to
right,
step right into
to a good situation. In
one
part,
of the best offensive situations any first-year quarterback has ever, or
right.
first-year starter has stepped into.
Part of which was having the guard in place, right? So, Minnesota was expecting to hit the ground running, to basically, like, they weren't anticipating a downturn by moving away from Darnold and going to McCarthy. They were expecting, okay, McCarthy might not be as good as Darnold was last year. On the other hand, the offensive line will be way better, so we expect this to keep on moving.
So then we have another big move in the first round. Jaxson Dart to the New York Giants. Giants trade up to pick 25 with the Houston Texans, and they go get Jaxson Dart. So they get Abdul Carter at 3, Jaxson Dart at 25. Wasn't sure if Dart's whole draft stock was dependent on, first off, going into the draft, we thought he'd be QB3 off the board, if anything. Yep. We thought Shedeur Sanders would be off the board by now. We thought that the Pittsburgh Steelers were the only team out of the top 10, right? In the top 10, the Jets could have done it.
Yeah.
The Browns, there was all these different teams that could have drafted a quarterback. But once you got past those teams, the Saints at 9, it was like, all right, if you get past the top 10, it's the Steelers at 21. Steelers just go get a defensive tackle. Now, what happens at quarterback? Well, the Giants, who were trying to trade up for Cam Ward, they decide, okay, we're going to take Abdul Carter at 3, then trade back in and get not Shedeur Sanders or Tyler Shuck. They're getting Jaxson Dart here at 25.
Yeah, and the fact that, obviously at this point, Pittsburgh passes on Shedeur Sanders, so, Mel Kiper's already banging on about all the teams that are letting themselves down and everybody else by not drafting Shedeur Sanders. Then the Giants trade back into the first round and select Jaxson Dart. And from their point of view, you would have to say that's really well done, right? That's really well worked the board. Like, they select Abdul Carter, the blue chip edge rusher prospect at the top of the draft. They don't, grab the quarterback. They don't force the pick of a Shedeur Sanders or a Jaxson Dart at the top of the draft. They're like, no, we want the blue chip player, and then we will try and get the quarterback at the back end of the first. We'll see if we can make this trade work. And they did. They got Jaxson Dart. And based off his rookie season, it looks like they hit on one. He impressed me, certainly relative to my expectations. And my only concern now is, can he protect himself enough to last?
The two things about Dart, I thought as a prospect, I guess I'll admit I was wrong here too. I didn't think he looked like a special athlete.
I thought
he was
amazed by his running last year.
So I described Dart. I thought he was a good scrambler, as in had a good feel for it, finished runs. I thought he was a good scrambler. I remember watching him in the pocket thinking, I don't think he's the most athletic in the pocket, movement-wise and everything. And maybe there's still something to that. But he was elite as a runner last year. He had that, he's in the open field and just making defenders look stupid. I know some people compared that to Mahomes. And there's a little bit of Mahomesian. He's just a step faster than you expect and a little bit more power than you expect. He's just a little bit better as a runner than I expected. He's a lot better as a runner than I expected. But he's got a good feel. He's a good runner who has a good feel for it and power and can finish runs and everything. And then he had that first game. I was like, this looks like a Tebow game because he didn't hit any throws, but he was, just getting it done and making it work. And what I was impressed with, no Malik Neighbors for most of the time there. Nobody to throw to. And inconsistent run game. And he just elevated the squad, even if it was ugly at times. I thought he threw the ball pretty well, ran the ball well, got banged up a couple times. We kept asking, are you going to change your game? Are you going to take care of yourself more? Still have that question. But I was so impressed with what he did in that situation. It didn't lead to a ton of wins, but they beat the Eagles up pretty bad. They were beating up the Broncos before they had one of those fourth quarter collapses that the Broncos were putting on other teams. So there's a lot to like about Dart's rookie season with the Giants.
I couldn't believe nothing from his college tape suggested to me that he was going to be this high-end impact rushing threat at quarterback. And yet the second he got on the field for the Giants, they were deploying him like he was not even Josh Allen, like Cam Newton, right? They were running him incessantly.
Did they do it early in the season? They brought him in as a change of pace runner for Russ, right?
And they were leaning into more than any quarterback I've seen lately as the true design running threat as a quarterback. I'm like, why? I don't. And yet he was justifying it. He looked really good doing that. So I was incredibly surprised by how much of a potent rushing threat he was. It was a lot like Daniel Jones. Like, I don't think people thought Daniel Jones was going to be that level of rushing threat coming out of Duke. And it seemed to continually surprise people throughout his NFL career. Wait, what? Daniel Jones capable of doing that against me? And Jaxson Dart looked really good doing that. I think that opened up a lot of what he was able to do as a passing threat. Like, a lot of his big plays were extend the play a little bit and then heave something deep to Wan'Dale Robinson.
I think that's one of the hardest things to project from college. You could say the same thing about Josh Allen and Mahomes. Like when players become special runners at the next level. Like Lamar was an easy projection. Like some other guys were easy projections. Tebow ran, I think, the way you would expect him to run from college to the NFL. Allen became an elite scrambler. That was unexpected to me.
And even with Allen,
Mahomes became an elite scrambler and didn't necessarily know that was going to happen.
At least with Allen.
Like as far as feel, always getting what you need, that type of thing.
At least with Allen, you can sort of say, okay, sure, the sort of the effect he's had as a rusher has been impressive. He is, however, huge, right? And even if you just sort of tap into that, you're like, okay, at that size, given that he's an athlete, you can imagine a world where he's able to do some damage. Like Dart's pretty big, but like 6'2", 220, not 6'5", 240 or whatever, right? Like totally different size proposition we're talking about once he gets going. And like I thought he could run at the college level, and when he was running, he was a load to bring down, but I didn't see that level of dynamism. Do you remember there was one run he had, I forget who it was against. Was it Bobby Wagner? He left just like grasping at nothing. And I'm like, I slowed it down and like watched it like a dozen times straight. I'm like, I don't understand what he did to make like an all-pro linebacker basically just stand there and not even touch him, right? Like I don't see anything that he did on this play, and yet somehow
that's the Mahomes. Like he's just got some of that magic, man.
And it's like this is sort of like Mykel Williams as a route runner. Like he's not doing anything special on this play, and yet for some reason the corner bites.
The hypnotizer. It's like the onside kick, the hypnotizer.
For some reason the corner bites the first thing he shows him and starts running in the opposite direction. Like Jaxson Dart did nothing special in this run, and yet Bobby Wagner was completely paralyzed. I think it was him. Was completely like paralyzed by the first sort of slight dead leg he showed him inside, and then he just ran slowly in the opposite direction.
So that was pick 25, the New York Giants. They come over with Abdul Carter and Jaxson Dart. Pick 26, we already broke it down. It was James Pearce Jr. So if you're tuning in just to hear James Pearce Jr. analysis, go back to pick 15. We talked about him with Jalen Walker, the two Falcons edge rushers. Pick 27 was Malaki Starks, Ravens safety out of Georgia. I believe there was a hindsight video of Eric DeCosta maybe debating Malaki Starks and Nick Emanwari at safety. Mm-hmm. By the way, that whole process I'm fascinated by. Like, if you're literally that close to on the clock and debating two players, like, you haven't already sorted this out?
And why do you wildly different players, albeit safeties, like nominal safeties. Like, some of that's revisionist given the deployment of Emanwari, but even at the time, you wouldn't have been saying that Malaki Starks and Nick Emanwari were particularly similar players, earmarked for the same role, right?
Yeah. I think Starks had a fine rookie season. I think Emanwari got all the pub because it was flat. It's a flashier role, playing closer to the line of scrimmage, making more plays. Starks played more free safety.
And he was definitely better, I think. But
I think he was better too. And Starks, I thought he got exploited by double moves. And my issue with him at Georgia, I always felt like he was better actually just covering one-on-one, like go play man in the slot like he did a lot of times. I thought a lot of people liked him as a free safety. I thought he was out of position at times at Georgia. I think you saw some of that with Baltimore, but I think he also made a lot of good plays working downhill, pass game, run game, tackled well. I thought it was a good, solid rookie season for Starks. I'm not saying it was as good as Emanwari, but it's certainly less flashy and, not as much pub behind Malaki Starks' rookie season.
I think he was good. I think he was a little bit of a victim by the fact that entire Ravens defense kind of fell apart
they had no pass rush.
Yeah, relative to previous performances and relative to expectations as well. I expect him to look a lot better this year when that whole thing is improved.
Yeah, so cut down on some of the big plays. He had 12 missed tackles, but given, he had like 90 attempts or whatever, it's actually not that bad for a safety. They kind of came in bunches for Starks, but I also think he does have some versatility, whether it is free safety. I think he could play some kind of nickel here and there. I just think he's better maybe one-on-one rather than eyes on the quarterback all the time. Almost the opposite of Dylan Thieneman where I said Thieneman coming out this year, like eyes on quarterback,
Right.
feel, getting in the right place at the right time, athletic. I think Starks could be use his versatility maybe in a different way going forward here for the Ravens. I also think the pass rush is just going to help
Yeah.
as they rush the passer better. Pick 28, Detroit Lions go Tyleik Williams, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State. He was a guy expected to maybe go top 40 to 45 and sneaks into the first round here at pick 28 for the Lions.
Yeah, and a fit I think that a lot of people loved because there was some sort of question of the redundancy there with Alim McNeil, like do they really need him? But you're like, man, having said that, Tyleik Williams, this hold the point, run stuffing type of defensive tackle, what he could do on that defensive line just seems fun. So I think a lot of people liked the pick when they made it. Again, like all these other defensive tackles, I felt like he was a little bit underwhelming year one.
So he was all right. I think so. The big body defensive tackles, as I watch them, I think they all. It's really tough to play the wide zone game. It's really tough to play laterally and make an impact. But when you run at them and you run downhill, they can dominate.
Yeah.
I think Tyleik has a lot of that. Where
And there's so much zone now that
Yes.
it's almost like these guys are specifically being neutralized by the way teams are deploying the run.
yes, I mean he can much like. Who came out of Ohio State this year? Dude, my mind is fried. The second round Ohio State defensive tackle that we
Caden
love.
McDonald.
Caden McDonald. How do you forget names? Caden McDonald might be even a better line resetter than Tyleik Williams, but Tyleik Williams had some of that in college, right? You work downhill on him, and you're not going anywhere. I think he got hooked and reached at times, but he holds the point pretty well, and you run at him, I think you're going to have problems. I was kind of impressed by him as a pass rusher. I thought he showed some of the power, translated it. He had a really nice play where he tracked down J.J. McCarthy in the flat, tackled him.
Checked in 9.
Tracked him down. I thought it was okay as a rookie season. I think the Lions fans were mostly pretty happy with Tyleik.
Yeah.
My question with him was, for this pick, will he rush the passer enough? And I thought he was okay in the run game. Again, depends on what scheme you're running against him. Okay in the run game, okay as a pass rusher, and I think there's still TBD if he's going to be an effective, 3-down type of player.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious what sort of development we see from all these defensive tackles in year 2 and beyond. Like how much do they adjust to the NFL level and improve?
That was the 5th defensive tackle off the board in the first round here.
Yeah, and none of them really had Walter Nolen had the cleanest performance-wise.
On like 200 snaps.
Yeah, on like the smallest sample size. Otherwise, all of them you would say were disappointing relative to expectations.
All right, pick 29, the Washington Commanders. Well, NFC championship contender here. Josh Conerly, offensive tackle out of Oregon. We talked about him on the
Tice's favorite offensive tackle in the draft.
Tice's favorite offensive tackle. I thought he struggled at times last year, power-wise, got moved. Another one, I think he improved as the year went on. It looked cleaner, and I think that's what you're looking for. And moved from left tackle to right tackle. Needed to put on some mass, and I think that's going to bode well for him going forward. But I think he'll be okay. I think he was okay as a rookie.
Yeah, it's funny. So he had that shifting sides of the line, was always sort of seen as a bit of a developmental prospect, has the athleticism, has the speed and the quickness and the movement skills, but was going to be a little bit lightweight making that move. And it's funny because sometimes you're like, he was the guy that got run over for that one rep at the Senior Bowl. And it's like, okay, primarily that was used for the other side. Like, oh, look at this rep. But there were some people who were like, man, you can't look at this. He just gets run over. And other people were sort of we're adding the context, right? Of like, well, number one, there was a specific thing that he got asked of. Number two, he just flipped to the other side of the line and that rep, like the next rep. And it's like, it's not fair, basically. Like that one rep is not a good rep. And he actually had a pretty good Senior Bowl week overall. On the other hand, you're like, after his rookie season, you're like, well, he kind of struggled with power, and on this one rep, he gets run over. Like, I actually didn't do a bad job of highlighting the concern.
When a player struggles with power earlier in their career, I usually have one of two excuses. I either go back to the David Bakhtiari, where David Bakhtiari was so good at everything except getting bowled. And it's like, well, core strength improves when you're 23, 24, 25, so that'll get better. And Bakhtiari is the extreme case. Or I go to, well, if he's on the other side, like the two places where I think Conerly really struggled was playing a little bit high in the run game, getting off the ball, and then dealing with power. And a lot of that could be technique issues, right? If your footwork is not pristine off the snap in the run game or getting into your pass set, you're not going to be able to absorb power. You're not going to be able to make the backside cutoff or whatever he's trying to do. And I think he struggled, Conerly, with both of those things. And if a year or two at right tackle, he's a little bit more comfortable, I could see a jump to his game.
Yep.
With Conerly. He was young. He's really young coming out. You said the Tysons. It was Mike Tice in particular said, Josh Conerly is my OT1 in a world where 3 guys went in the top 10. Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, and Armand Membou. That was fun. Just fun time before the draft there. So it's Conerly at pick 29. 3 more picks. We got Maxwell Hairston, cornerback out of Kentucky, going to the Bills at pick 30. I think this was a fun one for the Bills because I think it was like I don't think you always want to draft for scheme and scheme changes, but I thought this signified like, man, they want to be fast and they want to play man and they want to be able to beat the Chiefs by being fast and playing man. And they had Christian Benford the year before, and he got hurt in the AFC Championship game, and they had to put Kyer Elam in, and it felt like the last 2 off seasons, the Bills are like, we need to get deeper on the defensive side of the ball, particularly in the back 7, and this Hairston pick was one of those picks to move in that direction.
Yeah, it felt like a nice match of need with player, right? Like they had a couple of big needs coming out of that season. You're like, they got wrecked in that game because they couldn't run the coverages that they wanted to run. They clearly need a cornerback capable of doing that. And then they had that wide receiver thing, right? They go with the corner. Hairston runs a 4.2. Combine, looks really good, high-end player, high-end athlete, like the sort of the right type of prospect to be selecting around there. And then he gets hurt, and we don't see him for most of the season.
But we did get what I thought. I mean, when we're watching the season and we're sitting there reviewing every single game on a Monday morning, which, by the way, if you're here new in the offseason, you're joining us every Monday morning, 7 a.m., reviewing every single game for over 3 hours. They beat the Chiefs with Maxwell Hairston covering Xavier Worthy, picking off Mahomes in a fourth quarter comeback.
It was the best game of the season as well.
Right. I mean, that felt like storyline-wise, it's like you drafted this guy who runs 4.3 to cover the Chiefs were the Chiefs still at the time, right? The defending AFC champions 3 years running. You drafted this guy to cover the speed receiver from the Chiefs that you let the Chiefs get by trading. Like, it just felt like a fun little story. And then he comes good by playing man coverage on a go ball and intercepting Mahomes. That was the peak of his season.
Yeah.
That was the peak of his season. Now,
and it was funny.
I'm not saying that, he can't continue that, but, the injuries and everything hurt it. But that's what they drafted him for. And I do think with the new system, Jim Leonard coming in, Benford and Hairston are going to be called upon to play a lot of man coverage, play one-on-one.
And it was funny because it felt like if they, going because of that need, it's like, he's going to play right away. They kind of need him to be good. And that itself is a question mark. Then he gets hurt. He misses like the first half of the season. You're like, man, if you'd known that going in, you'd be like, this is a real problem for Buffalo. But then out of nowhere, Tre'Davious White, who'd come back to the team, having been awful in the last couple of places he was because of injuries and all that. Tre'Davious White rolls back the years and, has the best season he's had for ages. And it didn't matter that we didn't see half a season of Maxwell Hairston and that he wasn't starting. Like Tre'Davious White was picking up the slack.
We've talked a lot about historically how the data says cornerback play is volatile. Tre'Davious White might be single-handedly responsible for that, going back to LSU. Remember his was like, sophomore year was great, junior year was terrible, senior year was great. Then the NFL's the same thing. He's up, he's down, he's up. He's cooked with the Rams. He's a little better with the Ravens. He's making 4 game-changing plays in the playoffs against the Jags.
But he looked absolutely toast at the end of the time outside of Buffalo. They bring him back. You're like, okay, that's a nice story, reunion or whatever, but I wouldn't expect anything from that. And then he's out here making critical pass breakups with the game on the line, making plays. Amazing.
All right, we're up to pick 31, and this got interesting here. The 31st pick was the Kansas City Chiefs, and then the Eagles at 32, the Super Bowl game. And then the Eagles traded up one spot. They flipped picks so that the Eagles could take Jihaad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. How does Howie do it again? Howie does it again.
Does it again.
Because Campbell, there was a point in the whole draft process I was like, man, I really love Campbell as a prospect.
People didn't know where he was going to go.
And I thought he could go into the teens.
Right.
I thought all those teams in the teens that needed pass rushers, I thought the Bengals, and maybe they should have.
Tampa Bay.
Bengals at 17.
Was a huge one.
Tampa Bay was we kept mocking him.
Right.
Tampa Bay at 19. I thought he was going to go in the teens. I thought Seattle late in the process, like, that could be a sneaky good, just get this really good,
But I think also
in there for Mike McDonald.
People were pushing him up into the top 10. I mean, maybe not into the top 10, but like to the fringes of the top 10. Like this guy could go whatever, 11, 12, blah, blah, blah. Like everyone was incredibly high on him, and then he ends up falling to the bottom of the first round.
Yeah, and I think the Eagles got a really good player. We talked about him weeks back now on our breakout player list. Off-ball linebacker that could play Sam, like old school Sam, on the line of scrimmage, can hold the point in the run game. He's running the seam in cover 2. He's got good range and coverage. And then because he does rush the passer well and would line up as a true edge rusher every now and again at Alabama, there's thoughts about, hey, could he do that at the next level? I'm not sure if I see that necessarily, but I think he's a legitimate 3-down linebacker threat who can do it all. Play the run, range and coverage, plus rush the passer as a blitzer.
Yep. I thought it looked really good as a rookie. Looks like a good pick. I would expect very good things for him going forward.
And then rounding out the first round, the Chiefs had just traded down from 31 to 32, and they go Josh Simmons, the left tackle out of Ohio State, a guy that was coming off the patellar injury, missed majority of the 2024 season, was seen as a top 10 to 15 prospect in this draft, didn't know where he was going to land. The prospects for the knee were not great. Is he even going to be around for training camp? Then they take him. They have a left tackle need for the future anyway. They had brought in Jalon Moore on 2-year, $15 million contract. Certainly not going to keep them from drafting the left tackle of the future, and they do it.
Right.
And by the time he gets to training camp, Josh Simmons are like, oh, he's full go. There's no issues with the injury. So they must have had a pretty good report by draft time.
Yeah, and would be the second time in the last few years where their medical staff has done a really good job. Obviously, Trey Smith fell to where he was because of medical concerns, and the Chiefs doctors cleared him, and he's one of the best guards in the NFL. So kudos to the Kansas City medical staff. But yeah, like Simmons, so you had the injury itself, question mark. The fact that it was a patella tear, which is not a good knee injury. It's not like the routine ACLs that injury has become. It's like a patella injury. A, it's a much rarer type of injury. B, the history of guys coming back from that is not as great as some other positions. So a lot of things going into that. And then, yeah, the fact that we were saying potential medical redshirt for him. They got Jalon Moore. Jalon Moore can play this year. Then next year, Josh Simmons can step in. And then, yeah, it's like by training camp, no, he's ready to go. And actually, he's the best tackle they've got. He's going to start day one. Then you have the weird absence that you had from him that they never explained. And look, it's some kind of personal issue. They're not obliged to explain it, but it just leaves everybody grasping with sort of inadequate language as to what we're dealing with here. He went away from the team for a fairly extensive period of time during his rookie season, and nobody was ever really told what was that. Consequently, you've got no idea what to do with it as a data point, as a piece of evidence, as just something to talk about as we're going forward. And now you have all this stuff of he's weighing 285 pounds and looks like a linebacker.
Now, again, as of record time, that's true, but he could be over 300 again.
He was aiming for 300 by the start of the season. Now, my point would be 300, even 300 puts him extremely light for an offensive tackle.
As a player, Simmons had a really interesting production profile because he was okay at San Diego State, and then he steps in at Ohio State. He looked really good in pass pro for about a half season, but that was it, and then he gets hurt. I know if you looked at PFF grades, I mean, look, I think he looked really good in pass protection last year. I thought he was impressive for a rookie. PFF grades are low from a run game perspective, and I think there's some validity there. If you watch him many times, like Laiatu Latu just smoked him many times in the run game, just instant losses. And if you look at Kansas City's run game last year, how ineffective they were, I think there was they're really good in the interior. There's some room to run that, Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco were not taken care of. But I think Simmons was really struggling at times, cutting off backside, just when they were running behind him, just whiffing on blocks. And I think he was a part of the run game issues last year. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on going forward. If they're going to be under center a little bit more, relying on Ken Walker a little bit more, most of the time when we're evaluating a left tackle, we're like, hey, just want to see pass protection. But the same way, I think Will Campbell maybe added a little bit more value in the run game than we thought relative to the pass game woes. Simmons was so good in pass protection, but I thought he struggled in the run game a little bit, and that showed up for a team that struggled in the run game overall. So something to keep an eye on for the Chiefs going forward.
Yeah.
Good rookie season, but I'm saying like the run game does matter too.
He was good. Yeah, good as a rookie. Good at the more important area still, I think, in terms of pass protection, like being confident in your left tackle holding up, particularly when Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, a $500 million Patrick Mahomes. These are all good things. The fact that he was not great in the run game is a legitimate, valid concern and a significant thing, a significant negative in his profile. And then you have that layered against this idea of he's 285 to 290 on his way to 300. And even if he's 300, that's like 10 to 15 pounds lighter than most offensive tackles play the game at. That's probably not helping his run game.
No.
So these are all, I mean, this
something
is
to keep an eye on for Simmons.
It's a weird thing. Again, like I keep making this point that there's a reason offensive tackles play at 315 even when they're like 250-pound humans, right? These guys are adding that weight, not because it's fun, not because like they're adding it because it's optimal or they believe it's optimal for play at the NFL level. And even if Josh Simmons gets back to 300 pounds, which is 15 pounds to add in a couple of months, right? That's no mean thing by itself. That would put him like in the bottom 10 percentile of NFL offensive tackles for a guy who struggled year one in the run game already, right? Like it's a weird approach to be taking is all I'm saying.
Got to watch it. Got to keep an eye out. That was fun, man. I enjoy these shows. This is the third time we've now reviewed the 2025 first round. We did it live. We did it right after going live, and now we've done it a year and a half later, whatever it is. Over a year later. Good times. We're going to do this a couple other draft classes, 24, 23. See what you like. But I enjoy
more data.
But I enjoy going back and saying, here's what we thought at the time.
Yeah.
A little bit of here's where we were right or wrong. Here's what we were thinking. Here's where the teams were right or wrong. Here's what they were thinking. And what has the player been, right? We talk about these players like crazy going into the draft, but being able to see here's what they were after year one, after year two, after year three. It's fun to go back and go through that.
Yeah, I mean, I like it because there's a wide range of like, I mean, this is basically what we said at the time, right?
Yeah.
The same thing is true. Then there are guys that have had really sort of wild seasons, rookie seasons, positively or negatively, that don't affect anything. Like Ashton Jeanty was pretty bad as a rookie overall, production-wise, right? But not because Ashton Jeanty was bad, because the offensive line in front of him was garbage. And they're like, honestly, even though he was incredibly unproductive last year, I don't think I would change that much about my assessment of Ashton Jeanty. But then you get guys who are like, yeah, look, even after 1 year, I think I'm wrong on that guy, right? I'm already convinced that he's better or worse than I was expecting. Like, I think Tyler Booker's already better than I was expecting, given the 12th overall pick and given the lack of athletic makeup and all those kinds of things. So it's just this interesting spectrum of, you know, what you can learn after a year on a guy.
All right, man, that was fun. Again, we pre-recorded this and, you know, just some fun, I believe we're in July, fodder to get us through the summer as we get closer to training camp. Be sure to hit subscribe and thumbs up and do all the things. We'll be going 3 days a week during the season, going live after all the primetime games. So there's a lot to look forward to for the season. That's it for us today. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you again next time on Check the Mic.